Welcome to r/relationships, where Karen is demanding to have more babies. My partner requires 2 more kids ASAP, and she will use IVF or a donor if I don't agree. Me, 31 male, and my partner, 29 female, have been together for 8 years, and we have a 1.5-year-old together. From the start, she's always said she wanted 3 kids. I was open to at least 1, but figured we'd take it one at a time and see how things went. I mean, how can you know what parenting is like until you're actually doing it? Turns out, that assumption was a huge mistake. Having our first kid was a major life shift for me. It dragged up a lot of unresolved issues from my past, which led to postpartum depression and anxiety. I've been in therapy almost weekly for 2 years now, trying to work through it all. As much as I love our kid, I can't shake the feeling that I might be one and done. The idea of going through it all again feels overwhelming. For over a year, my partner was scared about having another kid too, mostly because her first birth was very difficult. But recently, she's completely set on having our second kid. She says she has to have 3 kids and that she'll feel deeply unfulfilled for the rest of her life if we don't. In her mind, 3 kids are non-negotiable. She always planned to have them by the age 30 or 31 because she doesn't want to be an older mother. She's worried about increased health risks and wants to be young enough to see her grandkids grow up. For her, 35 is too old. She actually wanted to start having kids at 25, but she waited until she was 27 because I didn't feel ready. Back then, I thought we had serious communication issues that needed to be addressed before we brought a kid into the world. I encouraged her to go to therapy and repeatedly brought up concerns about how we handled conflict. In hindsight, I probably should have been more direct about why I wasn't ready so she wouldn't feel like her time was being wasted. But it's done now and I can't go back. Since she turned 25, I've been very clear about where I stand on the kids issue whenever we've talked about it. I've always felt like having another kid should be a mutual decision with 2 enthusiastic yeses. I think it's something we need to discuss openly and without pressure to make sure we're both on the same page. She, on the other hand, feels like time isn't on her side and insists we need to start trying for the next baby right now. She's upset and deeply hurt that I'm hesitant, especially since she's already waited 2 years for me to be ready for our first. The pressure I'm feeling is crushing. She's made it clear that if I don't want to have another kid, she's prepared to move forward without me. She's even said she'll pursue IVF or use a donor if I refuse to get her pregnant. She's told me she loves me, but she won't give up on having the 2 kids she feels are missing from her life, even if it means ending our relationship. If she goes through with IVF, I feel like I'd have to leave. I don't think I could stay in this relationship knowing she made that choice without me. But leaving would mean losing so much. My partner, time with our kid, the life we built together. It's heartbreaking to even think about. And honestly, even if we did separate, I'd still want to help her out as much as I could. I'd want her to have the energy to be a great mom to our kid, which would probably mean being involved in her IVF kid's life to some extent. I'm spiraling. I don't know what to do. If I agree to have a second kid now, there's no guarantee I'll feel ready for a third. I might just find myself in the same nightmare 2 years down the line. But if I say no, I risk losing everything. She recently told me that I have until her next ovulation to decide. The stress of this ultimatum is eating me alive. I feel like I'm drowning. How am I supposed to make a rational decision when I'm this overwhelmed? If anyone's been through something like this or has any advice, I'm all ears. I don't want to make the wrong call, but every option feels like a lose-lose. Your choice is difficult but clear. Either leave her or agree to have 2 more kids with her. Nothing we say can help you. You have to make this choice and you have to make it fairly quickly. You've known for 8 years now that she wanted 3 kids, so don't act like she just sprung this on you. Don't act like she's being crazy or unreasonable. I'm definitely picking up that tone from you. This one is on you because either you didn't believe her back then or you thought she'd be able to change her mind, but she said what she meant and she meant what she said. You were the fool who didn't pay attention. She's wanted to have kids your whole relationship. She wanted to start trying at 25, and that was over 4 years ago. She's always said she wanted 3 kids. Why are you only just now hearing her? How long did you think you could kick this can down the road for? Exactly. She told him several times, but he didn't listen. Now that she's not telling, but screaming desperately, now he's finally hearing her. I think people are being too harsh. Sure, she made up her mind and was crystal clear that she wanted 3 kids, and why didn't you listen? But I feel like she's being super toxic and using reproductive coercion on you. Why does she need 3 kids in today's world? I'm sorry, but that's toxic. Can you guys even afford 3 kids? Yikes. Marriage counseling stat. How is it toxic to want 3 kids? Just because you don't agree doesn't make it toxic. What the heck are these comments? If a woman was saying that she's done after 1, but her partner was adamant on 3, none of you would be saying, "Oh, but you knew he wanted 3 kids." Especially if the person was saying, "I'm gonna need to get you pregnant by your next ovulation." It's the same dang thing. A lot of people change their minds after 1. More kids aren't just something to have no matter what. A grown adult assesses the relationship and sees if you as a couple can and should have more. That involves talking it through, not giving ultimatums, not just saying, "No, we must." This is so annoying. Why did you waste her time? Either shut up and do it or let her live her life without you. Grow up. And it's hilarious that you said she had communication issues. She seems to be communicating very clearly. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. If you know that you don't want to have any more kids, it's probably not a good idea to have more kids. My brother-in-law confessed his feelings for me after I went wedding dress shopping with his fiancée. Plus final update. I'm feeling overwhelmed, so let me give some background. My husband and I have been together for 5 years, married for 2. Since the beginning of our relationship, I've been great friends with his older brother. I always wanted an older brother growing up, so we clicked pretty quickly. 2 years ago, his brother started dating this amazing girl. From the start, I made a big effort to befriend her. I figured it could be nice for both of us since we're the only women in the family. It worked out great and we became close friends. When they got engaged 3 months ago, I was so excited for them and even more thrilled when she asked me to be a bridesmaid. Today we went dress shopping together and it was such a fun day. We had brunch, some mimosas, and a blast trying on dresses. She found the right dress and we all went back to their house afterwards to celebrate. Everything was going perfectly until it wasn't. At some point, I ended up alone in the kitchen with my brother-in-law. It wasn't unusual and I didn't think much of it at first, but then he hit me with something I was not prepared for. He told me, "I think I've had feelings for you for a few years, and I've never been able to tell you. I just needed to know if you've ever felt the same." I froze. I didn't even know how to process what he was saying. All I could do was shake my head and stammer out, "No, I've never thought about you like that. You're a friend, a brother, and that's it. I never would." I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I immediately went back to where his fiancée and the other girls were. Trying to act normal was hard, but I managed to pull off a discreet excuse. I told her I wasn't feeling well because I got my period and would have someone pick me up. She didn't think twice about it, and I left as soon as my best friend came to get me. Now I'm sitting at home, still in shock, waiting for my husband to get off work. I know without a doubt that I'm going to tell him what happened. There's no way I'd keep this from him. But after that, I'm lost. Do I tell his fiancée, or do I make him tell her? Should I leave it alone and just let my husband handle it? I don't want to ruin their relationship, but I feel like she deserves to know. I don't even know how to look at him the same way after this. Has anyone been in a similar situation? I could really use advice on what to do next. This whole thing has me shaken, and I don't know what call to make. Update. I didn't want to tell my husband we need to talk while he was at work and make him panic. Having some reassurance from here really helped me hold things together. When my husband got home, he immediately knew something was up. I explained everything to him and he was livid with his brother. He hugged me while I broke down crying from all the stress. He told me I'd done everything right and that none of this was my fault, which was such a relief to hear. As I calmed down, he called his brother to confront him. Before he could even get far, we found out his brother and his fiancée were already on their way to talk about what had happened. Turns out, after I left their house earlier, my brother-in-law had confessed everything to his fiancée. She had apparently suspected something before because she had caught him staring at me during a family vacation once. At the time, she brushed it off, but admitted that it lingered in her mind. When he finally told her, she slapped him. Honestly, deserved, but stuck around to hear him out. He promised her that his feelings for her were real and that he had never acted on whatever weird feelings he had thought he had for me. She told him he needed to apologize to both me and my husband before they could figure out their next steps. When they arrived, my husband took his brother into another room for a one-on-one conversation while I stayed in the living room with his fiancée. She and I talked for about an hour, and it was a very emotional conversation. We both cried. I promised her that I never had any feelings for him and that I had no idea he felt anything like that until today. She believed me, and I could tell this whole thing was weighing on her. She also shared that she felt a small sense of relief in all of this because, as horrible as it was, she no longer felt like she'd been imagining things or overthinking his behavior. That didn't make it hurt less, though. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law confessed to my husband that a lot of his feelings came from a place of jealousy. He said he had struggled with comparing himself to his younger brother, especially after we got married. He felt like my husband was further along in life, and he somehow associated that with me. He admitted that this wasn't something he fully understood at the time, but after confessing to his fiancée and hearing her reaction, he realized it wasn't really attraction. It was some messed up mix of envy and admiration that he hadn't dealt with properly. When my husband and his brother finally came back into the living room, my brother-in-law looked completely defeated. He also looked a little roughed up, but I didn't ask questions. He apologized to me for putting me in such a difficult position, and I could tell he meant it. After a lot of talking, we all agreed on a few things. For one, their wedding is officially on hold. Thankfully, they hadn't booked anything or sent out dates yet. His fiancée said they would be going to couples therapy to figure out if and how they could move forward. She made it clear that she still loves him, but needs to see real effort before she can trust him again. As for me, she reassured me that she holds no ill will toward me. If they do move forward with the wedding, she said she'd still want me as a bridesmaid if I'm willing. That meant a lot to hear, but I told her we'd cross that bridge when we get there. My husband and his brother have some serious work to do on their relationship. My friendship with my brother-in-law will never be the same, but I'm okay with that. For now, the four of us have agreed to keep this private. They'll be honest with others about going to premarital counseling, but the details stay between us. I've seen comments saying I should have kept this to myself since no harm was done. I guess I get that perspective, but there was no way I could hide something like this from my husband. If he found out later and knew I hadn't told him, it would have been a huge betrayal of trust in our relationship. Yes, I know this could blow up, but that wouldn't have been my fault. My brother-in-law made his own choices, and he's the one who created this mess. I just hope we can all move forward from here. I'd love to see the subtle things that you did to him all these years. You never at all flirted with him in any way? Bro's feelings and confidence to shoot his shot came from somewhere. OP. It wasn't like it was a smooth talking question. He stumbled through it. And no, I never flirted with him. I teased him, in the same way his entire family does. They're that kind of family, and after about a year, I joined in. The only thing I did that the rest of the family didn't was drink with him more. Basically just because we're the only two that like to do shots, and we have the same flavor preference. I would never dream of flirting with my partner's boyfriend at any point in the relationship. Update. My husband actually called his brother today and invited him out to one of their favorite bars to watch a game. This is something they used to do all the time before all this happened, either just the two of them or the four of us together. My brother-in-law seemed pretty shocked that my husband reached out but agreed to go. Not long after they made plans, my brother-in-law's fiancée called me. She was really honest and said she wanted to see if we could keep up with the casual hangouts we used to have. Normally, when the guys would go to the bar, we'd do something together like start a do-it-yourself project, work on a puzzle, or watch movies. She said it might feel a little awkward at first, but hoped we could keep that part of our relationship going while they worked through everything. That meant so much to me, and of course I said yes. We've all agreed on a few boundaries moving forward. My brother-in-law and his fiancée are starting couples therapy as soon as possible, and my brother-in-law is going to see someone on his own to work through what the heck is going on with him. For now, the four of us won't hang out as a group, and brother-in-law and I definitely won't be alone together. I have to say, my potential sister-in-law has handled this whole thing with so much grace. She's one of the most level-headed people I've ever met. She and my brother-in-law have always been a great match. He used to have these walls up with everyone, but she broke them down so easily just by being herself. Honestly, what he did is so out of character for him. When he proposed to her, he went above and beyond to make it perfect. He planned everything to the smallest detail, from picking out an outfit for her to arranging for her parents, who live hours away, to be there. Even the blanket at the proposal site was her favorite color, which he chose intentionally. It's clear he loves her, so this whole thing is just baffling. I truly don't believe that even if I had said yes to him, which obviously I wouldn't, he would ever leave her for me. Not that it was ever an option, but I think his feelings were more about some unresolved issues in himself than about me personally. I'm cautiously optimistic about their relationship moving forward. They're both committed to finding a way through this, and there's real love there. My husband and I have a marriage maintenance therapy appointment coming up soon anyway, so we'll talk to our therapist about all this too, but I feel good about where we stand. Your future sister-in-law is pathetic for staying with that man. That's all I'm gonna say. OP. I don't think it's pathetic to give something, even a messed up situation, a little extra time to decide on going forward. The way she's looking at it is that she can leave and nobody would blame her, and she wouldn't blame herself. But she loves him, and for herself, she wants to keep trying. She was planning a future for him, and if she just leaves immediately, she'll have a lot of inner turmoil to work through. If she takes a few therapy sessions and decides to leave, she would feel more confident in her decision. That's her choice to make. You may think it's pathetic, but it's what she decided was best for her. My boyfriend got me Pokemon for Christmas, and I can't let it go. Do I call it quits or work it out? For context, my boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. Since the day I met him, he's been obsessed with Pokemon. He talks about it all the time, collects cards, plays the games, watches the show. He's all in. Me, I don't care about Pokemon at all. Never have, probably never will. But as his girlfriend, I've always done my best to support his hobbies. I've listened to him rant about rare cards, helped him organize his collection, and even tagged along to conventions, even though I had zero interest. It's just what you do when you care about someone. Anyway, this past Christmas, we had a few short conversations about budgets and gift ideas. We both agreed to keep things reasonable, and I made sure to mention a couple of things I'd been wanting. A few beauty products I'd been eyeing, and a specific hoodie from one of my favorite brands. Pretty simple stuff. He didn't give me a lot of specifics, but I knew he wanted Pokemon cards, so I made sure to include those in his gift. Christmas morning rolls around, and we're exchanging gifts. I hand him his first, and he's thrilled. He got a couple of booster packs, some accessories for his collection, and a framed photo of us because I thought it would be sweet. He seemed genuinely happy, and seeing him light up made me feel good about my choices. Then it was my turn. The first gift I opened was a pack of Pokemon cards. I was confused, but I thought, okay, maybe this is a joke or something. I even laughed a little, waiting for him to explain. But no, he just sat there grinning. So I moved on to the next gift. It was a booster box of Pokemon cards. At this point, I stopped and asked if he was kidding. He smirked and told me to keep going. The final gift? Another booster pack of Pokemon cards. I just stared at him for a second, waiting for him to say something, but he didn't. He was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning, which I guess he technically was. Meanwhile, I was sitting there with 3 gifts that had absolutely nothing to do with me. I'm not into Pokemon. I've never been into Pokemon. He knows this. I told him I needed a minute and went to our bedroom to cool off because, honestly, I was furious. I didn't want to snap, but I needed time to process what had just happened. When I came back to the living room, I found him on the floor, surrounded by open booster packs and cards everywhere. He had already torn through all of the gifts that he gave me. I couldn't even speak. I just stood there in shock. Not only did he get me something I didn't want, but it was clear he had bought them for himself and used Christmas as an excuse. When I finally said something, it was along the lines of, "You didn't actually get me anything, did you?" He looked up at me, confused, and said, "But I thought you'd enjoy opening them with me." I didn't even know how to respond. I told him I felt hurt and that it seemed like he put zero thoughts into my gift. His response? He started going on about how expensive the booster boxes were and how I didn't appreciate his effort. He actually tried to make me feel guilty, like I was being ungrateful for not being excited about the gifts that weren't for me in the first place. Since then, I've tried to bring it up a few times, hoping he'd understand why I was upset, but every time, he just doubles down. He keeps saying how much those boxes cost and how bad I made him feel for not appreciating them. I don't even know what to do at this point. Part of me feels like maybe I'm overreacting, but another part of me just can't shake how selfish this whole thing was. Am I being ungrateful, or is he just being a total jerk? So you're telling me he's known and dated you for at least 3 years and has never paid attention long enough to get you gifts you may actually like? And you're questioning if you want to do this for the rest of your life or not? No, this is crazy. Even if you wanted this, he then opened your gift. That part is unforgivable too. He's closer to 6 mentally than 26. Karen's sister-in-law loses it on me for canceling my Netflix without telling her. Me, 41 female, and my husband, 42 male, subscribed to Netflix 7 years ago when our daughter, who's 18, asked us to. We were in a difficult financial situation at the time, but said we'd give it some thought. We caved. However, only on the condition that she spends 1 night a week watching it with us. 2 years after, my brother, who's 34, married his wife, who's 36. She was married previously and has twin daughters, who are 10. I love them to pieces. Sister-in-law then gave birth to their son, and all heck broke loose. My nieces were constantly dropped off at either our house or their maternal grandparents' house. There wasn't a word of warning. They were just dropped off and picked up the next day to be deposited somewhere else. I told my brother that we had to talk after a month of this. He texted me back a week later and asked for my Netflix login. He said they needed for bonding time. I should have called BS, but he's my brother and I didn't want to refuse him. Recently, my nieces and I were at the park with our youngest daughter, who's 11. One of my nieces asked to sit with me. She asked why they don't visit often anymore. I say that she should be happy spending time with her parents. She admits that they are left to watch Netflix while sister-in-law and brother spend time with the baby. When I got home, I told my husband. He was beyond furious. shaming my brother for being a bad father. His words, biological or not. I couldn't disagree. It was me who had the idea to unsubscribe altogether, and this went beyond teaching them a lesson. We never really used it anymore. My eldest complains that they're apparently going to ban account sharing. This would be a bad thing because she's across the country in college and is the only person who somewhat actively uses it alongside sister-in-law. My husband admitted that the money for the subscription could, and probably should, go towards more useful things. We let our subscription expire, and my sister-in-law soon came knocking. She went off on us for canceling, that it wasn't our call to make since they use the account too, yada yada yada. Here's where I think I might be the jerk. I shut the door in her face and said that she needs to seriously self-reflect. She scoffed and left. Ever since, I haven't seen them. Sister-in-law has gone radio silent, and my brother speaks to me through our parents. This not only upsets me, but my kids too, particularly my son who's 15. My brother promised to take him to a sport event this week, but has since canceled. Deep down, I know that I did the right thing. However, I frankly feel like crap seeing how miserable my kids are. Not only that, but my niece's relationship with him and sister-in-law is totally unsalvageable, according to my brother, in a Facebook post blaming me and my husband for his now difficult family life, which has led to a few nasty comments. I'm wondering if I should have just remained complicit. I'm tempted to resubscribe just for the sake of making things a little more peaceful, as per an ultimatum my sister-in-law and brother wagered. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I honestly don't even need to read this story to tell you you're not the jerk. Why should you have to warn someone who's mooching off you that you're going to cancel your subscription? She wants Netflix, she can pay for her own subscription. Am I the jerk for not including my niece in my daughter's birthday since her parents can't afford it? I'm 31, female. My daughter, who's 8, and my niece, who's also 8, were born 10 days apart. Due to this, ever since they were little, my sister-in-law, who's 29, has always pushed for them to have a shared birthday party. When the girls were younger, around 1 to 4, we used to do shared birthday parties. But my husband and I realized that we were always the ones to foot the bill for everything: food, decoration, location, etc. The girls also were complete opposites. My daughter has always been more of a tomboy, while my niece is super girly. When my husband and I told sister-in-law and my brother that we won't be doing this shared birthday anymore, they were really upset, and it started a huge fight. They said they can't afford to throw a nice birthday for my niece, but we can, so it makes sense that we pay for it since we're family. Yeah, not gonna fly with my husband and I. So we stuck by what we said, and ever since, the girls have had separate birthdays. My daughter and my husband love watching Formula One together, and she wanted to have a Formula One themed birthday this year. The weekend before the birthday, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. Sister-in-law, my brother, and niece were present. My parents were asking the girls if they were excited for their upcoming birthdays and if they were having parties this year. My daughter told my parents she's having a Formula One themed party this year. Sister-in-law answered for my niece and said they're not going to have a party for her because things were tight. The conversation was left there. Fast forward to this past weekend. Daughter's birthday was on Saturday. We had the party and it was going great. The whole family was invited as usual and everyone was having a great time until the cake. I'm in the kitchen with my mom, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and a few other family friends talking. I pulled the cake out to get ready to bring it out for everyone. Sister-in-law takes a look at the cake and looks confused. Sister-in-law: "Is this the girl's birthday cake?" Me: "What do you mean, the girl's? The cake is for my daughter." Sister-in-law: "Well, I thought since I mentioned that things are tight this year, that you'd include niece's name in the birthday." Me: "I understand your situation, but how come you never once mentioned this to me?" "Well, I thought it would be common sense. Now my daughter isn't going to have any kind of celebration for her birthday this year because you and your husband are so selfish." She then stormed out of the kitchen, made a huge scene at the party outside, yelling to her husband and my niece that it's time to go, and they left. Since then, she's been messaging me and my husband nonstop, trying to make us feel guilty that my niece isn't going to have a birthday party and calling us all kinds of names. I feel bad that my niece isn't going to get a birthday party. Am I the jerk for not including her, even though they can't afford it? Not the jerk. First of all, it's simply not your job to make sure your niece has a party. That's up to her parents. If things are tight, Maybe they need to be creative, but it's still on them. Secondly, it's ridiculous for her to think that hinting around will get her daughter added to the party. If it was as important to her as she acts like it is, then she should have had a frank conversation with you and simply asked. You could have still said no, but there wouldn't have been the confusion. This is on them, not you. Not the jerk, but I'm very confused. How much money can you possibly invest in an 8-year-old's birthday party? Most of my kids' birthdays have been at the park with a self-made chocolate cake, some sweets, a fruit salad, a treasure hunt, and some balloons. If you want a cool location or a VIP experience or whatever, you can spend more obviously, but that's completely optional. Kids at that age mostly want to have fun with their friends and blow out their candles. Your trash cans can only be out at a specific time. We live in an HOA, and if you don't, lucky you. We've never had any real problems. They don't do much other than make sure the park and gardens look good. Anyhow, for whatever reason, they decided to add a new rule. It wasn't needed, but I guess they got bored and wanted something to do. Maybe someone kept leaving their trash cans out all week. Fine, just ask them not to. It's not that hard. The new rule states when trash cans can be put out. They can't be out before 6 a.m. on Wednesdays and must be put back before 6 p.m. the same day. This is obviously stupid and has a few problems. First of all, some people use a different company. The HOA provided one goes on Wednesday and it's cheap, so most people use it, but you don't have to. Some people have theirs go on Monday or Tuesday. Also, a lot of people here work in the medical field and just aren't home during those times, so no one is there to put out or bring in their cans. So a few of us got together on how to comply, but be annoying about it. We decided to comply with their set times as best we can. Take it out at 6 when a lot of us go to work or go for a morning walk, and take it back in at 6 since most of us are home. Some of us help by taking others' bins to the street if they're at work. But when it's time to take out the trash, doing it as loud as possible. Bin has wheels? Drag it. Got it to the street? Make sure it's firmly placed on the street. Need to take out the other bag? Slap it in there and let the lid slam shut. For those who have trash go out on other days, comply with the times, but do it on your own trash day. Then also put them out on Wednesday as required. If you can, leave trash in them and leave the lid open so it would bake in the sun all day. Yes, it did smell like hot trash. That's the point. After 3 weeks of this, an email was sent out. The rule was thrown out and we were all simply asked to put out and take in our cans within a reasonable amount of time, preferably on trash day. Was it really that hard to ask nicely? Why not just address whoever was the problem? Know that because an HOA rule was changed, a lawyer was paid to look over it before the CC&R could be updated. That means this stupid rule cost every resident money. Anyhow, we are already planning on voting out one member of the board who we know is the problem come the summer election. Am I the jerk for refusing to show my husband the rest of the ultrasound photos of our baby? I, 26 female, am married to Bill, who's 30. We're expecting our first baby together in 3 weeks, but I have an 8-year-old from a previous relationship. To put it lightly, Bill has no filter whatsoever. It's extremely annoying at times since I'm someone that overthinks everything and will go over what I'm about to say 10 times before it leaves my mouth to make sure it's not rude. He thinks there might be something wrong with him because he doesn't understand social cues and he's pretty awkward, but he won't get checked for anything. Today I went for an appointment and they did a 4D ultrasound because they haven't been able to see his face lately due to him always sucking on his thumb. I've never had a 4D ultrasound before, so I was excited to see my baby. Of course, like all 4D ultrasounds, the baby looked like a crisp lasagna when you don't know what you're looking at, but still cute and exciting seeing your baby and all of their facial features for the first time. I got home and waited for Bill to come home so I could show him the photos and videos. I have him sit down and I clicked on the best, clearest photo we got to show him first. A few photos he had his hand up or was at a bad angle or the umbilical cord was giving him a handlebar mustache. He looks at the photo and I'm pointing out that his eyes and nose and mouth, etc. And the first thing out of his mouth is, "Wow, he's ugly." Immediately, I get mad, lock my phone, and refuse to show him any other photos. He asked if that was the only photo I got, and I said, "No, I got more, but why should I show them to you if you're just going to sit there and call him ugly?" I was so excited to show you these, and you've completely ruined the moment because you don't know how to shut your mouth. He looked shocked that I was mad and said it's fair game because I call the baby names all the time. When I'm in a ton of pain, I'll say things like, "This little crap won't get out of my ribs." I told him it was completely different, and he claims it's not, and he should be allowed to call him ugly, and also said hopefully that's not how he'll look when he comes out. I just refused to show him any more photos, and I told him to get out of the room. He's mad that I won't show him the rest and still doesn't understand why I'm upset. I'm pregnant, so maybe it's just hormones getting to me. So, am I the jerk? Did I overreact, or is he just an idiot? Edit. To answer some common questions I keep getting asked. Is he on the spectrum? We don't know. He and I have both stated that might be the case, but he refuses to get tested because he's scared he might be. I understand this is an issue, but I can't force him to go. I've encouraged him as much as I can and as often as I can, but he doesn't want to get a diagnosis. He was joking. Unfortunately, he wasn't. I poked fun at these types of ultrasounds in my past. I can joke around about it easily. The problem is that he didn't say it in any slight amount of joking way. It was, "Wow, he's ugly," 100% serious and matter of fact. This was a final straw moment for me. I've been on him for the past 2 weeks about his comments like this about other people. He's been saying very shallow, judgmental things, and I don't think it's right. You shouldn't call the baby my baby. It's both of yours. I understand where you're coming from, but there's a reason I called him my baby. We got married, agreed we wanted to try for a baby, and tried for several months. This was not a surprise, and we both decided we wanted a baby. After I got pregnant, any single little ow that was uncomfortable. I'm throwing up from all this morning sickness, or anything that wasn't just absolute praise to the baby, I was to, "Well, you wanted this," every time. I explained how much I didn't like him saying that because it sounds like I'm the only one that wants the baby and he doesn't care, and he still says it. We compromised, and as a running joke, now I call him my baby because I'm the one that wanted him. When talking about the baby, Bill will often say, "my boy," or "our baby." I never corrected him or have ever said, "No, it's my baby, not yours," because it's not that serious. But that's why I said "my baby" in the post. A ton of commenters are saying I'm the jerk because babies are ugly. If you can look your excited pregnant wife in the eyes as she's expressing her joy over seeing the baby that you guys will be holding in just a few short weeks and respond with, "It's ugly," then you are the problem. There's a million other things you can say. And now after I give birth on what should be an amazing moment, I'm going to be scared that he's going to say that again instead of focusing on my baby. I'm going to worry if my husband is thinking that the baby's ugly. Luckily, thanks to some lovely Redditors, I have the comeback. He looks just like you in my pocket now. I didn't show him the rest of the photos because I showed him the best ones you could see his face and chubby cheeks perfectly. It didn't look creepy or weird, so if he could look at the best picture and say, "Ew," why would I show him the rest that have his hand in the way or shot a bad angle? There's no point in me having to get my feelings repeatedly hurt just so he can see photos that are considered mess-ups anyway. No jerks here. If you were upset by what he said, I can understand why you wouldn't want to show him more. But let's be honest, those photos are very creepy. Why did you have a baby with this guy? Not the jerk, but wow, your husband is something. Lack of social cues or not, he doesn't need to say every thought that pops into his head. And you calling the baby a little crap because they are physically in your ribs is not comparable to calling him ugly. Everyone sucks here. You two need to stop it. Seems to be a lot of tension surrounding the birth of your expected baby. Your husband should admit that that was a boneheaded thing to say, and you should show him the rest of the pictures. You two better grow up before the real baby gets here. You're the jerk. Dad calling the baby ugly is something you're both supposed to laugh at. Let's face it, lots of newborns are ugly, and there's nothing wrong with that. You need to take a chill pill and realize that you're taking life way too seriously. Most babies get less ugly as they get older, so seriously, quit tripping out over small things and just enjoy life. My hubby made jokes about our baby being ugly too, so I'd always hit him with something like, "Yeah, looks like he's really taking after you, unfortunately." Guess what? He stopped calling him ugly after that. By getting mad and freaking out over people saying things, all you're doing is giving them power over you, letting them control your emotions. We need to be able to control our emotions when people say things that upset us and fire back at them with words to give them a taste of their own medicine. Edit. I get that not everyone can come up with witty responses at all times, but I stand by what I said. When you flip out over literal words that someone said to you, you're just showing your lack of self-control. Manager tried throwing me under the bus, so I showed everyone her incompetence. I recently resigned from a toxic workplace as a data analyst at a startup. It was promising at the start, but not long after, I noticed many red flags, including the fact that my manager had absolutely no data analysis or management experience prior to being promoted. How can you manage analysts without knowing basic Excel functions? I ignored those red flags and trusted her leadership because I liked the company's goals. Little did I know this would be the worst decision ever. I basically did all the work for a team for the whole year I was there. When I ran the numbers for reporting and analysis of team performances, she always asked me to dumb it down so she can present it to high-level management. I thought everything was going well because I only got good feedback from her and the rest of the team. About a month ago, a coworker who I don't get along with made a complaint about me, which was absolutely untrue. Manager believed it without investigating, and all of a sudden, I was placed on a PIP. She spouted all types of lies to HR, and when I refuted those claims with written evidence, they doubled down and started gaslighting me. You're just too negative. I refused to sign and was threatened with termination, so I complied and started building a case against them. I knew she was doing the PIP to terminate me, and she looked for internal candidates to replace me in secret because she was dumb enough to set the meeting up beside me. Once I signed my contract for a new job, I did basically forget all and started working from home. Before my resignation, she asked me to do some reporting for her, so I ran the numbers and sent her the raw data, told her where the files were located, and that she can analyze the data and make the presentation herself. Since she's the data analyst manager, she should know how to do it. She tried reporting me for that, but ultimately backfired because they asked her if the work that I did was actually wrong and was forced to admit she didn't know what she was looking at. Everything else in the team was questioned, and I believe they are now being audited by an external investigator. Credibility destroyed. I'm now working for a small manager who is competent and has clear goals for the team, but that was a heck of a ride. Small win against toxic management, but a win is a win. Edit. PIP is a performance improvement plan. It's used by managers to address underperformance and start a documentation process, usually used as a first step to fire someone or phase them out. Am I the jerk for lighting a match at night and scaring my boyfriend's dad? My boyfriend and I are staying at his parents' house. It's been going really well, but his dad is very particular. He has moments every day where he corrects or instructs the other people in the house on how he wants us to behave. I don't really have a problem with it, but he has a few rules that do make me a little uncomfortable. I don't need to get into why, but I always have stomach issues here. I've been visiting them a few times a year for almost a decade, and it just is what it is. My boyfriend and I used to stay in a room downstairs with a bathroom, and it wasn't a problem, but his brother moved back home, and now we don't have our own bathroom. I don't want to advertise the fact that I have stomach issues to everyone in the house, and I'm not allowed to use the bathroom fan at night, so I usually use potpourri or just a drop. When we got home the last time, my boyfriend got a text from his dad asking him to ask me to stop using strong essential oils as it was making him feel sick. I was so embarrassed, and I honestly have been kind of dreading coming here again. I was talking to my mom about this, and she suggested that I bring some paper matches because that's what she used to do. I got some paper matches, and they actually work pretty well. Tonight I woke up from my sleep because I had stomach issues. I lit a match when I was done, ran it under some water, and folded it up into some aluminum before throwing it in the garbage. I fell back asleep and was woken up a while later by a big commotion. My boyfriend's dad smelled burning and thought the house was on fire, so he woke everyone up in a panic and searched the house to see what was burning. I didn't immediately equate a match with a house fire, and I didn't smell anything when I woke up, so I didn't bring up that I had lit a match. It wasn't even clicking for me that the match was what he smelled until my boyfriend asked me if I smelled anything when I got up earlier to use the bathroom. Long story short, I just got chewed out by his dad for lighting matches at night or lighting matches in general as a guest in their home, and even his mom was upset because I could have started a fire and nobody would know. I apologized and everyone went back to bed, but then my boyfriend lectured me for like 15 minutes about embarrassing him and playing dumb about not knowing what his dad smelled and not using common sense, and then he told me to go to sleep and try not to wake everyone up again. I'm honestly so upset. My boyfriend is sleeping soundly, and I'm just laying here getting madder and madder. I just want to wake him up so we can leave because I feel so uncomfortable. I really don't want to face everyone in the morning. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but I don't know if I'm thinking rationally because I'm tired and I can't fall back asleep. What do you think? Am I the jerk? I think you get stomach issues at these people's home because it's an incredibly stressful environment where you are walking on eggshells the entire time to tiptoe around his extremely volatile and aggressive father. I mean, goodness, have these people never owned a candle? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Folks, if a match has been run underwater, then short of the intervention of God himself, that match is not going to start a fire. Good grief. Wrapping it in tinfoil is already a step further than reason dictates. Adults can be trusted to dispose of matches. This poor woman has endured repeated visits to this clearly disturbed man's home. She's doing literally everything she can think of to be respectful of his deranged behavior. Something is wrong with this family. At a minimum, they're enabling the father's personality disorder. Stay away from these people. You're the jerk. Lighting matches in someone else's home is a huge no-no. All it takes is one little mistake, and you can be the cause of a house fire that burns down their entire house. Not smart or necessary in any way. If you want to cause potential fires in your own home, you have every right. But to take this risk in someone else's home, they had every right to be furious, and I would have done the same. Next time, try not to light any fires in other people's homes in the middle of the night while they're asleep. Woman confuses me for employee, gets locked out of the store, leaving her groceries behind. So last night, I'm finishing up my shift as an EMT, and it's been a long and tiring one. The calls weren't bad, but there were a lot of them, and we were all over the county. Shift is over, I change back into my comfy clothes, sweats, t-shirt, and hoodie, and I head to the store to get something for dinner. I get there just in time since they're closing in 10 minutes. I assure the cashier that I was just grabbing something quick, and I go and pick up a lasagna from the frozen section. I grab it and turn to head to the checkout when I hear, ahem? Not a throat clearing sound, but someone saying it like they were reading it out loud. I turn around and I see a woman who snaps off with, I need you to go in the back and get me a pack of the frozen pretzels. I say that I don't work here and point out where an employee just went behind an end cap. She snaps, you do work here, and you need to stop being lazy and get me my pretzels. I again say, I don't work here, and I turn to walk to the self-check. She flips and storms off, muttering about lazy employees and managers. I finish checking out, and I'm grabbing my stuff and leaving when I see her again with the cart and a manager, and she yells, there she is, that's the lazy jerk, and she starts towards me. I'm not even going to engage, and so I hold up my receipt and my one item to the self-check girl and I walk out. I hear the manager raising his voice and saying, ma'am, ma'am. Turns out she left her cart behind and stormed out of the store to confront me. I get in my car to drive off, but she's standing in front of it, so I can't go anywhere. She's also giving me a lashing that I'm too checked out to really pay attention to. Great, I'm already on my last nerve, and this is just too much. Manager sticks his head out of the door and hollers, ma'am. She turns and makes a hushing motion towards him. He hollers, ma'am, one more time, and she hollers back, saying, I'm dealing with your employee, since you're too much of a little jerk to do it yourself. He bristles and says, madam. She cuts him off with, shut up, screeched at the top of her lungs. He shrugs, and I watch him go back inside, fiddle with the locks, flips the sign to closed, and pulls down the shades. As I'm watching this, she gets annoyed that I'm not paying her my full attention, and she yells, what are you looking at that's so important to ignore me? I just pointed at the shop and say, they just closed and locked the doors. I'm not sure what she screamed since it was pretty incoherent, but she did run towards the door. Seeing my chance, I drove off, leaving her pounding on the door and yelling. Am I the jerk for leaving the room when my boyfriend enters? I'm 35, female. My boyfriend is 38, male, and we've been dating for a long time, about 7 years. I moved into his house after a year of dating. He works Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job. I take contract work, and my days and hours vary week to week. I'm an introvert, but I work with lots of people and basically always have to be on at work, so I absolutely require time to myself to recharge. Early on living together, I liked to plan one of my days off on a weekday so I could have the house to myself. But frequently, he'd choose to work from home or take a sick day on that day, and I would get frustrated when he didn't leave for work that day. When I expressed this frustration, he'd get annoyed and angry. I told him that I just need time to myself occasionally. It honestly has nothing to do with him. And he responded, "How could it not have anything to do with me? You just told me you don't want to be around me. Plus, this is my house. I'll be here when I want to be." I adapted and got used to living with less alone time for myself. Things changed during lockdown. He now works from home every day. He gave up some of his hobbies as well, and it feels like he never leaves the house anymore. I still work contract work out of the house, but I know that I will have virtually no time that is truly to myself when I'm home. I do all the grocery shopping and lots of other errands as a means to be alone with myself between the drive and the shopping time. Sometimes I just sit in my car in the parking lot or in the garage for like an hour in total silence when I drive somewhere. Sometimes he wonders what has taken me so long, and I tell him that I just took my time with the errand. But I still need space because I feel drained all the time now, and when I mention that it would be nice to have some alone time, he dismisses it and says, "Where would I even go right now?" Now I frequently wear earbuds around the house, sometimes not even playing anything, to cancel out some noise. If I'm in a room alone and he enters without an obvious plan to interact with me, I'll get up and move to a different room where I can continue to be by myself. Example, if I'm sitting on the couch in the living room and he enters the kitchen right next to me and plays a podcast on the Echo and starts making food, I don't ask him to turn off the podcast or leave. I just silently get up and move to the office. Or if he comes into the office, maybe I'll go down to the basement and sit on the laundry table. I didn't ask him to leave the space or to stop making noise. I simply remove myself to continue my alone time. Sometimes he thinks I'm being passive-aggressive or mad at him and gets frustrated with me. As far as I'm concerned, I've expressed my need to have some space, and if he can't understand, that's on him. I see it as a compromise to have my alone time and meet his needs as well. So, am I the jerk for creating my alone time by whatever means necessary? Edit for clarity. I work out of the house, 2 jobs, 60 to 70 hours per week. Lots of human interaction at both. He works from home full-time since lockdown. To clarify, I don't leave the room every time he walks in. It's once or twice per week when he comes into the space I have specifically put myself in to be alone. Almost always when I get home from work, after saying hi and checking in. For example, "Hey, how was your day?" "That's great. My day was super busy, so I'm heading back downstairs to relax while you finish your work day. Still want tacos for dinner? Yeah? Cool. Let's eat at 5:30 before I leave for job number 2. If he comes down to interact with me, talk to me, help me with whatever I'm working on, then I stay and hang out with him. But when he's just making noise in the room where he knows I'm trying to quietly relax, I do relocate sometimes. Edit 2. Not sure where this idea came from that I live for free in his house, and frankly, I'm not sure why it's relevant. We split all expenses based on our income ratio. I pay 45% and he pays 55% of all expenses, including mortgage, insurance, utilities, internet, groceries, house and yard maintenance, etc. I also really enjoy cooking as a hobby and have some dietary needs, so I do nearly all of the grocery shopping, cooking, meal prep, breakfast, lunch, and dinner to cover both of our meals for about 5 of the days a week. Probably done responding now. Thanks for all the feedback. It's been helpful and insightful, and I appreciate the different perspectives. Peace. You're not the jerk for needing time to yourself, but you need to take a long look in the mirror and ask if this is a relationship that's sustainable. You have to very clearly communicate what you need from your partner and come up with solutions together. And if he can't compromise with you for your benefit, this is not the relationship for you. Respecting your partner's need for space is absolutely necessary. I myself do not need to spend every moment with my partner, and he's very much like your boyfriend. I just had to tell him that I needed time to myself when we were home. He could play his games, and I could watch TV in the living room or read, but I couldn't entertain him all the time. Not the jerk. He is for not letting you have some time to yourself. It's a perfectly reasonable and perfectly normal request. He makes it about him and ignores your needs. You're going to go crazy if you guys don't work this out. If he won't accept that you need some space, do you really want to spend the rest of your life sitting in your car in the garage every time you need to be alone? Everyone sucks here. You both need better communication skills. Tell him outright that you need to be alone and set boundaries for yourself. Maybe set up a day with him where he knows to leave you the heck alone. I'm the exact same way as you. I don't think I can ever live with a partner because my alone time needs are so high. Definitely not the jerk. It sounds like he literally never leaves the house. That would drive me crazy. Can you maybe do a staycation by yourself? You're the jerk. You're upset that your boyfriend is in his house and working from his house, and you don't get alone time again in his house. Your solution to your boyfriend having the audacity to be in his home too much is to childishly leave the room. Move out if it's such a problem and rent an apartment. Honestly, if you think your boyfriend being in his home is a problem, you should end it. He shouldn't be expected to leave his house to accommodate you wanting alone time. The entitlement of you and everyone in the comments mad he won't compromise about being in his house. You paying rent doesn't change anything about it being only his house. At best, you're a tenant, and that's only if you have a contract. Wild Karen demands to use my wheelchair in the antique store. Cast. We've got me, we've got Nils, an old man, though he doesn't speak, and we've got Harriet, Karen. My husband and I rent a display space in an antique/consignment store for our collective side hustles. I quilt and crochet. My husband sells custom die-cast cars and diorama supplies. Every few weeks we go in and restock our space. This store is very large and can be a bit of a maze, and the store has designated rest stops throughout the aisles. One is across from our space. The store does not provide mobility aids for customers, so it is a bring-your-own policy if you need a walker or a wheelchair. I'm a wheelchair user as I'm paralyzed. My husband and I were at the store restocking the space. My husband had just left to take one of our totes out to the van, leaving me in our space sorting through one of my tote bags. When I hear someone huffing behind me, I don't really pay too much attention to it, thinking that someone might have been taking a break at the rest stop. I was just finishing laying out my sets on the table in our space when the person at the rest stop decided to talk to me. Do you know if the store has wheelchairs for people to use? I look up from my task and I see an elderly couple across from our space. The old man is standing next to the bench looking kind of annoyed, while the woman has flopped on the bench in an I can't take another step kind of way. I honestly was concerned that she might have been having a medical issue as she was rather plump. Are you okay? I ask, about to tell her or her partner to use the phone above the bench to reach the staff desk for help. This store is too big, Harriet exclaims. I can't walk anymore. Me. The store has a chair for medevac use. One of the employees can bring it out to you if you need help leaving. Harriet. But we're not done shopping. Me. I don't think they have wheelchairs to borrow. They've had issues with rowdy kids riding mobility scooters, so they don't provide them anymore. But if you use the phone above you, you can ask a staff member. Just dial 1 and it will connect you to the staff desk. There's a sign next to the phone that states this. Harriet seems to be thinking about her options, so I go on about my work. Nels wanders down the aisle, possibly looking for an escape route. Harriet. What about the wheelchair you're sitting in? Me. This is my personal wheelchair. It doesn't belong to the store. Can I borrow it? What? Surely she's not asking to take my chair to go shopping. Harriet. I want to use the wheelchair. You're young enough that you can stand to walk for a bit. I'll bring it back. Me. Ma'am, I cannot stand at all. I've been a paraplegic since I was 12. This wheelchair is not store issued. It's my personal property and it cost a lot of money. If you call the staff, maybe they can let you use the medical chair, or maybe they know of one someone has in their space that you can buy. But I will not give you my chair, and I cannot help you. At this point, I've rolled out of our space. I decided to head towards the vendor door and just leave. Rumor has it, Harriet is still sitting on the bench, waiting for someone to give her a wheelchair. Try to steal my legally rented parking spot? Enjoy getting fired. I'm a professional driver. As such, on the roads in the US, there are different truck stops throughout the country that has a pay-to-park system. Usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. The truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours, starting at 4 p.m. local time and extending to 3 p.m. the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30 and paid for a reserved spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night and would be back once delivery was completed. but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon, today. She told me that this was okay and she would mark the spot as sold when I left. That way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she could consult her notes and deny the sale. 11:15 p.m. rolls around. I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 a.m. the next morning, this morning. So I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot, only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I call the manager on duty and after giving her my info, inform her that all of the spots are full and that someone has parked in a spot and hasn't paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he's parked illegally and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror with my vantage point in the fuel island, where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand and some sort of smoking implement in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods, I'm not going to say it. I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and the tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies, and more importantly, what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab. Anything that isn't a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter, also not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and absolutely not loaded. This driver had all of that and some other not-so-legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in cuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company safety director and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot and their driver is going to jail over the not-so-legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not-so-legal stuff. I guess he played the mess around and find out card and it bit him in his career. Am I the jerk for interrupting my son's date so he could pick up his sister? I'm a single father, 43, to 2 kids, Max, who's 17, and Liza, who's 8. I usually have Liza in after-school clubs so that I'm able to pick her up after work. However, last evening I was given some work that had me working overtime. I did try my best to negotiate out of it, but my manager told me that the assignment was to be completed by that night, so I just did it. It was nearing towards 6 p.m., and I knew I wouldn't be able to make it to Liza, so I called Max and asked him to pick her up. He responded by saying that he couldn't because he was on a date with his girlfriend for their 6-month anniversary. I told him that I understood, but that I really needed him to get Liza and that I'd make it up to him for interrupting. He just angrily turned off the phone, and I thought that while he was mad, he had just decided to go pick her up. 30 minutes later, I receive a call from Liza's school on where I was because the school was close to closing down and no one was there. Luckily, one of Liza's friend's mothers said that they'd drop her off and it was all good. However, I don't really like it when Liza goes off with that particular friend. Not because of the friend, but because of the mother. She has this habit of asking math questions in the car that she knows Liza is unable to answer and then criticizes her over it. It's all just very mean. I called Max and asked him where he was and told him he was in big trouble when he got home. He just told me that he was busy and to leave him the heck alone. He came home at around 9 p.m. and I told him he was grounded and that he wasn't allowed to use the car for a good 3 weeks. At that, he got all mad and said that it wasn't his fault I was failing as a parent and unable to afford someone to collect Liza. Just want some insight on the situation. Was I being too harsh, and am I the jerk for interrupting his date? Edit. This is the 3rd time I've asked Max to pick up his sister in the span of a year and a half. Some people are asking why I don't have a nanny. Money is tight. Max and Liza's mother are not present in their lives, and no, I do not think of socializing myself with the parents at Liza's school. I'm at work most times, so I haven't found time outside of the yearly parent meetings. Please refrain from insulting my son. Not the jerk. You're not failing as a parent. You had to work overtime, not out drinking or messing around. Your son was in the wrong here for not helping, turning the phone off, and calling you out for it. But you two need to talk about this and discuss expectations. If you expect him to be part of the contingency plan, you need to be crystal clear on that, and what happens to car privileges when he doesn't. Dad was at work. He didn't deliberately ruin son's date. It was an exceptional work-related situation, and he needed son to step up as a family member to pick up sister. It seems dad does his best to let his son be free, with enrolling his daughter in all sorts of activities to help keep her busy until he finishes work. Son could have stepped up on this one. Not the jerk, Dad, and good thing you grounded your son for his entitled behavior. Posts like this make me feel hopeless for us as a society, as a species. You'll get a ton of responses from people who haven't raised kids. Many still are kids, and they haven't been taught responsibility and family. Asking your son to help on an unexpected situation is not and should not be a problem. Your son's response is entitled and gross, honestly. While being disappointed at the interruption would be fine, even appropriate, hanging up on you is disrespectful, and refusing to help is selfish and disgusting. Like societies, families only work when everyone contributes. Your son using your car is a privilege, not a right, and it's up to you to extend that privilege to him or not. The hanging up on you and the disrespectful way he spoke to you is all on its own enough reason to, at the very least, suspend that privilege. You do not have to tolerate disrespect, no matter how upset he was. Also, financial woes do not indicate how good or bad someone is at parenting, something your son is going to be painfully aware of very soon. If you give him money for allowance or anything else, help him learn by suspending that privilege as well. This is a teachable moment. Let him see there are consequences for his choices. Please, I implore you to ignore the ridiculous comments here that are characterizing asking for help as anything other than that. You should be able to ask your family for help, including your nearly grown son. Do not listen to anyone who says otherwise. There's a difference between asking for help in an unexpected pinch and forcing him to be a regular unpaid babysitter. Do not listen to this BS. You're not the jerk, and I hope you stick to your guns about your car privileges being suspended. His behavior was selfish and disrespectful, and he needs to experience consequences for that. Also, inform your employer that you have responsibilities at home that take precedence, and you require advance notice of any extra hours required or you won't be available. They cannot expect you to scramble to find childcare at the last possible moment. You're the jerk. Don't be surprised when your son goes no contact with you. Hate to break it to you, but your kid is your responsibility, not his. You can't make your son fulfill the role that you signed up for just because it's convenient for you. You're basically teaching him that he has to let people walk all over him in life. Is it okay for you to ask if he's available to pick her up? Sure. But if he says no, you need to learn to take no for an answer and stop being a controlling jerk. No refunds once you've stepped out of the store? Fine, I won't step out of the store. This happens in a large store in a European country. When you purchase something from them, and for any reason want to return the item, their policy is that they never give money back. They only give you a voucher redeemable same day only. I went to the store today and I purchased quite a long list of items. I got home, my wife looks at them and says we don't need some of them. I go back to the store, barely 20 minutes passed. The returns manager smiles at me as I tell her I just purchased there and I would like to return them. She tells me that I stepped out of the store so she can't refund, only gives me a voucher and that I must buy something else. I'd already bought everything I needed. Then she tells me to take the products home and keep them for the next time I would need to buy something. Then I can come and get the voucher and redeem it. Imagine keeping a pair of shoes in a bowl and remember to bring them with you the next time you happen to need something. I tried to reason, but she was adamant. Those are the rules. You stepped out of the store. You don't get a refund. And then it clicked. I asked, so if someone wants to return an item without leaving the store, they get the money back? Yes. You see where this is heading. Malicious compliance kicks in. I asked to return the items and get the voucher. I take the voucher, go inside the store, find a product to exactly the same amount. I buy it with the voucher. Right after the cashier, there's the returns manager. Straight from the cashier, I go to her, hand her that random product I had just bought, and say, I would like to return this. I don't want it, and I never left the store. She's looking at me with barely contained rage in her eyes. I kid you not. The awkward pause was getting longer, and then the manager comes along, looks at us, and I smile at him and say, I never left the store, and I would like to get a refund for this, please. He nods, Silent and not looking at me, she proceeds to refund me the money in cash. Company policy, right? My mother ruined my life, so I made sure she ruined hers as well. My mother is a textbook narcissist. So when I, at the age of 6, called my family crying because I knew something was wrong and she didn't love me, my mother decided to punish me for ruining her image. She spun this story to my family. I was a pathological liar and I was brainwashed by her mother to ruin her life. She effectively cut me off from my family and from the outside world and made sure I had no internet or cell phone access until I moved out. She prevented me from getting a job and tried sabotaging my efforts to get into college. I went through so much with her. When I was younger, I retaliated in immature ways. But as I got older, I was very, very careful with how I talked to her. I only ever told her the truth. Remember, she convinced herself that I was a pathological liar. So if I tell her the truth, she will now think whatever I said is only intended to hurt her. If I say, "You should bring an umbrella today, it looks like rain," she will make a point to not bring one to spite me and get caught in the rain. If a friend said something similar to what I said and was genuinely trying to help her, my mom would think that person is her enemy and remove them from her life. She only has nasty people in her life since she's removed herself from everyone who cared. Some examples. I would tell her about her friends that were plotting behind her back. She didn't believe me and hung out with them even more. They put her name on the payment for an object she doesn't have and has to pay tens of thousands of dollars for. You can't say I didn't warn her. When she had job issues, I would tell her exactly what she was doing wrong and why people don't like working with angry, difficult people. She thought I was trying to hurt her, so she doubled down on her behavior. I hear she's fighting to keep her job. Would suck to be fired right before retirement. You can't say I didn't warn her. She called me looking for advice. She was basically going to fly across the country to go stalk someone, and I told her not to do that. He'll dislike her even more, and he could call the police. I got in touch with her dad and told him to try to stop her. She went because now she was convinced it would work. The poor guy was hiding in his workplace while she was outside crying for him to come outside. Can't say I didn't warn her. I hear she's in therapy now, but it doesn't seem to be working much. I can imagine why. It must be a very upsetting experience to have a professional tell you the same lies your pathological liar of a daughter told you. I think this is how you get someone with kindness. Am I the jerk for reneging on my wife and I's agreement? I, Pete, and my wife, Eve, have an agreement. The agreement says that if one of us has a complaint or suggestion that we want to voice to the other person, we have to preface it with at least 2 compliments. So for instance, if I wanted to approach my wife about leaving her dirty clothes on the floor, I might first tell her that I liked the new shirt she bought and that I appreciated how she did the laundry the previous week, and then I would ask her if she could pick her clothes up. Yesterday, Eve was making some oatmeal chocolate chip raisin cookies, a recipe that she makes often by stirring together an oatmeal cookie box mix with chocolate chips and raisins. I really dislike raisins, so naturally I've never cared for this recipe, and I've even strongly implied my dislike for them on a number of occasions, but my wife never seems to get the hint. So yesterday, while Eve was getting out the ingredients to make the cookies, I started with 2 compliments. I said that it was a nice gesture for her to make cookies for the family and that I liked how she cooked them for the perfect amount of time so that they weren't too hard or too doughy. I then told her that I didn't care for the raisins and that I would appreciate if she made a few cookies without them, since the raisins aren't already mixed in. Eve adds them and the chocolate chips to the box mix. My wife nodded, so I thought that meant she was saying yes. Later, she announced that the cookies were ready to eat, so I came over and asked which ones didn't have raisins. With a confused expression on her face, she asked me what I meant. I reminded her of our conversation earlier. Eve replied that since I had given her 2 compliments on the cookies but only 1 complaint, she thought I enjoyed her raisin cookies more than I disliked them, so she continued with the original recipe. She said they couldn't be that bad if 2/3 of my comments about them were positive. I was at a loss, so I just sat down. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how to articulate my thoughts. Finally, I decided to just go for it. Eve, I began, but before I could continue, Eve interrupted in a warning tone. Careful, Pete. Remember our agreement. At that point, I lost it. I stood up abruptly and told her I couldn't pretend anymore, and that eating the raisin cookies like this was unbearable, and that my feelings about the cookies were pretty much all negative. I didn't preface that comment with 2 positives, so I broke our agreement here. At first, I thought I was justified, but I talked to my friends who told me that my wife doesn't owe me cookies, and I should just be grateful she made me cookies at all, and I shouldn't have broken the agreement. Eve is still mad at me. So, am I the jerk for breaking the agreement? If your agreement doesn't lead to clear communication and resolution, it's a bunk agreement. Your wife is weaponizing your agreement to essentially shut you up. Forced compliments aren't compliments. Yeah, this 2 compliments thing is a terrible idea. Those compliments would mean nothing to me if I knew they were forced just so that my husband could criticize something. It's way healthier to just compliment when you like something and have an honest discussion when something is bothering you. In this case, I think they're both being ridiculous, making this big of a deal about some cookies. It's super easy to make a couple cookies without the raisins. Just scoop a few out and add raisins later. But it's also ridiculous to expect your wife to cater to your tastes when you've hinted at wanting them a different way and not just outright asked for a few cookies to be made without raisins. Holy cow, the communication in this relationship is abysmal. In what messed up world are you not allowed to share that you dislike raisins without offering 2 essentially unrelated complimentary preambles? This is so odd. Maybe well-intentioned to form more positive exchanges, but this feels really extreme and counterproductive to me. Not the jerk. Your wife failed to uphold her part of the agreement you'd made. Depending on your dynamic here, you're both kind of dumb or she's manipulative. Think about it this way. You're not allowed to voice a complaint unless it's prefaced by 2 compliments. But if you preface a complaint with 2 compliments, she then assumes the complaints don't apply. Magic. No complaints are ever made. I suggest you get to therapy to get some intense guidance on how to actually communicate in a partnership. Am I the jerk for telling my brother-in-law to prioritize his family over a Rolex? I'm 35. My brother-in-law, who's 37, is known for impulsively spending frivolously on things for himself and does not have the money for, most recently, a pizza oven, paddleboard, and other costly non-essentials. He very much tries to keep up with the Jones as well. Anything he gets is because he saw someone else buy it because it's trending. He's up to his eyeballs in debt, not making money at his commission job, and currently fighting for his sobriety against a decade-long addiction that he successfully hid from his wife until a few years ago. I honestly believe his brain is stuck with impulsiveness, but he swears he doesn't need rehab or therapy to fix his issues. He has a nice truck with a $600 a month payment that his wife, my sister, who's 36, makes the payments on. Meanwhile, she drives herself and their baby around in the same car she's had since high school. It's not a good car and it doesn't even fit today's safety standards. Brother-in-law hits me up about wanting to buy a Rolex and wanted some advice about buying one. I sold them for a long time. At that point, I carefully worded my response and advised that luxury watches are for people who can afford them after everything else is taken care of, and he needs to prioritize his family before buying one. I also mentioned that in my experience, that people who can truly afford a Rolex could also flush the cost of one down the toilet and not be impacted even slightly, and that we aren't in that economic class of people. I've seen people overextend themselves on these watches just to be able to flex, and that's exactly what he's doing. I perhaps went too far by saying if he has money for a Rolex, then he has money to put his wife and baby in a safer car that was built in this century. He got upset because I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear, but I meant what I said, and there is no one else there to save him from himself. His wife is trying to be very supportive of him and his recovery and usually goes along with his impulse buys because it reduces their fighting and the money isn't going towards something bad. It's not my business, but I worry for my little nephew and considerably less my sister who enables him. I'll accept the jerk designation if I crossed a line here. Not the jerk. You're doing absolutely the right thing, and here's why. My late husband had exactly the same tendency towards reckless spending and also had an alcohol problem and other addictions. He sadly passed away in his 50s, and it was only afterwards that I fully realized that his reckless spending and the other addictive behaviors are all linked and can be symptoms of depression and anxiety. They were all giving him the temporary hit that he needed to feel better in that moment, but then made him feel even more depressed afterwards. Your brother-in-law might need some help with the same issues. My mother is demanding I adopt my niece and nephew. Myself, 26, and my partner, 32, are child-free and wish to remain so. Both of our families know this. Recently, my partner's brother and sister-in-law passed in an accident, leaving their son, who's 12, and their daughter, who's 9, behind. My partner's parents have been watching them for months, but they cannot do this full time as they are both in their 70s and have bad health. My partner's sister has also declined adopting the pair as she and her husband are both paramedics and work evenings and weekends. Naturally, they came to us next, and after weeks of discussion, my partner and I decided that we would not adopt them. We both know that we would make terrible guardians, which is the main reason we have decided to be child-free. My partner's family are understandably upset that nobody can take the kids, but they will now be adopted by family on their mother's side. This means they'll be a few hours' drive from all of us. It's important to note here that my in-laws have been incredibly kind during this process, have not pressured us at all, and accepted immediately that we would not adopt them. My mother, on the other hand, has been on my back, saying I'm making a horrible decision and that I need to put the needs of the kids above my own. She has also been mentioning that my partner and I will finally have kids, despite me telling her that that is absolutely not the case. She has always resented the fact that I'm child-free and wish to remain so, and I'm worried that she's seeing the kids as a way of becoming a grandmother. I feel terrible that we aren't adopting them, and I certainly feel like a jerk because of it, but it just wouldn't work out in the long run. I need to know, am I the jerk? Edit. Just for clarification, the kids will be going to their second cousin's house, who they are close with. They're not going into the system. Not the jerk. The kids are going to guardians who want them. It would be bad for them to be with someone who resented them, even more so if they were there because your mother wants grandbabies. Not the jerk. Your mother is not thinking about those kids' needs. She's thinking, yay, now I get grandkids and this will make them want more. Those kids are not going into the system. They're going to family who are capable of raising them. You and your partner knew that you weren't able to do the job of raising them and have made the right decision for those kids. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Am I the jerk for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? When I was in elementary school, I was the type of kid who got disrupts class often on their report card, so I never focused much on school. My district had this system where they would pair high schoolers with younger kids to help them with school, etc., and my mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. So my tutor was a freshman, Abby. She would come to our house after school to help me with my homework or something. I barely remember. My brother, John, was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I also talked to Abby a lot, and we were close as well. Fast forward 10 years, Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me that he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I liked John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. Then he tells me he had had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucks, and I told him he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing, and she wasn't doing well, but she told me she didn't want her to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before the wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the texts, and his girlfriend was saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having to share custody of her kid now, etc., just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this, and he said he would ask his girlfriend about it. A month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up, and he said he did, but saw nothing wrong with the texts, which upset me. I confirmed that he saw the same texts I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding, where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. This got my brother and his wife really mad, and they kicked me out shortly after, and my brother has been calling and texting me nonstop yelling at me. Am I the jerk? You know how vigilantes are technically in the wrong, but we all cheer them on anyway? You're the jerk, but high five. Don't want to work on our assignment? Fine, neither do I. This happened a few years ago in college. I had a class about entrepreneur projects, and that semester was building a business on paper. Basically, we had to figure out what the business would be about, how it would work, and how much money it would need and make. I did this subject in a different class so I could have Fridays free, so I didn't know anyone in there except for one guy. Let's call him Mark. So I teamed up with Mark and 3 other leftover people to be in our group. At first, things were working like a charm, since we only cared about passing the subject and didn't care about our grades. We would each do a part on an assignment. We had to deliver assignments each Wednesday, but we still got max scores on them. Our grade would basically be based upon all of our deliveries, plus some points on individual tests. Important info for later. Didn't take much time for things to go downhill. It reached a point on the project that basically we couldn't modulate the work anymore. The 5 of us would need to sit together and brainstorm about the next steps, more specifically when we reached the point of how we would earn money with our business. Either that, or one person would do everything alone. My group chose the second option, and this would basically be happening for 6 weeks. On Friday, I would send a message on our WhatsApp group like, "Guys, we have to deliver this stuff on Wednesday. When do you want to meet?" Saturday, no responses. Sunday, the 2 checks would turn blue, meaning everyone read the message. No response. Monday, I would send a follow-up message. No response. Tuesday, I would work hard and deliver it alone. Wednesday, 2 hours before the deadline, someone, usually Mark, would send a message. "Hey, how do you guys want to do it?" Which I would answer, "It's already done." And they would thank me and promise to release me from doing anything on the next assignment, which wouldn't happen and the cycle would continue. After 5 weeks, I was fed up and got in contact with the teacher. Her response was that it was too late to do anything now because she couldn't assign me to another group and she couldn't give me special treatment. But she told me to check my grades because most likely I already passed the subject. I looked on it, and with my individual tests, plus what I had already delivered on the project, I got a grade high enough to barely pass the subject. This was kind of messed up, but all the individual tests, and project as well, grades were public. So I saw that no one in my group had passed. The closest one was Mark, but he didn't deliver one of the individual tests, so he would still need to do something to pass. I could, then and there, be the bigger person and say something like, "Guys, I already passed the subject. Start doing something or I won't do anything anymore." But I can be petty sometimes. On the 6th week, I didn't do anything. Wednesday arrived, and Mark tagged me in the group asking if I did anything. I remained silent. Panic started arising. Group members texting me in private. I removed the blue "seen" icon in my WhatsApp and would read the messages in airplane mode so they wouldn't see me online when reading. Except for the group messages, because they would see that I read them regardless of leaving that setting on or off, so I didn't read them. Apparently, when you don't do anything related to the project in 5 weeks, it's hard to figure out what to do next. Deadline passes, I go to sleep. Class was at nights, at distance because of lockdown. Wake up the next day, several name callings, assignment not delivered, and the group threatening to report me to the teacher. My answer was simple. Teacher is already aware. I'm not doing anyone's work other than mine. You can all buzz off. And left the group. At the end of the semester, only Mark and I passed. They got their crap together in the end, but not enough for the other deadweights to pass. Was the sweetest 6. Grades here go from 0 to 10. 6 is the bare minimum to pass. I ever got. Mark never talked to me again, but it was for the best. Karen teacher takes my kid's book because she reads too much. My daughter, Chloe, who's 11, is very active outside of school. She plays soccer, takes swimming lessons, and will play outside a lot with the neighborhood kids. She's very social. Most of her friends are from outside of school. At school, however, she struggles making friends. Chloe has ADHD and was bullied in 3rd and 4th grade for some of that. While it was brought under control by 5th, current grade, these kids still don't play with her and pretty much ice her out. While I don't think they have to play with her, it also means that she doesn't socialize a lot at school. She's okay with this. Her teacher says our daughter often plays alone at recess or reads. My wife and I were not very concerned and explained she's very social and active afterwards. Cleo is a huge reader. She's currently reading her way through my wife's collection of books from her childhood. She loves them and treasures them, knowing that they were her mama's and wants to take great care of them. She came home on Tuesday very upset and worried her mom would be upset with her. I asked why, and she said her teacher took her book away and won't give it back until tomorrow. When pressed for more information, she said she was reading at recess. Her teacher walked over, took the book, and told her to go play. My daughter begged for her book back, and the teacher refused. I quickly assured Cleo that she wasn't in trouble and even called my wife at work to have her back me up. It was quite concerning that she was so afraid, as my wife isn't one to fly off the handle. She's also gentle with Cleo. As suspected, my wife assured her she wasn't upset and that Cleo did zero wrong. The next day, I brought Cleo to school early and walked to her class. No one but the teacher was there. I told the teacher to give me the book. She obliged and tried to defend herself. I told her to save it, and she had no right. There is no rule that Cleo has to do physical activity at recess, and we expressed no concern. The teacher said she was allowed to set boundaries for her class, but I pointed out recess was free time. It's not like Cleo is reading during math. We went back and forth, and finally I said I'd be reaching out to the principal. The issue was resolved quickly. I don't know the particulars, except the principal told me that Cleo is allowed to read at recess, and unless she's actively harming someone or reading during a non-designated time, she wouldn't have any more books confiscated. My wife and I were pleased, Cleo even more so. My cousin is a teacher at this school, just a different grade. She says what I did is hot gossip in the teacher's lounge, and that I've been marked as one of those parents. She says the teacher isn't paid enough, and I should have just accepted the rule. When I pointed out that we only have 2 months left at this school, Cleo is our only kid and starts junior high in August. That's not a concern. My wife and I feel justified, but we're wondering if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. And how does a teacher's pay have to do with her overstepping her boundaries? One would think that if she wasn't paid enough, that she'd actually want to relax at recess instead of harassing students. Not the jerk. How can you actively discourage reading and call yourself a teacher? Not the jerk. I did find the bit about the teacher not being paid enough and you should have just accepted the rule to be pretty comical. Your kid should not be mistreated at school because a teacher isn't paid enough. You did the right thing. The teacher was strangely out of line and lacking in compassion. Even if well-intentioned, she effectively punished Chloe, which was wildly inappropriate. Wild Karen loses it in the ER. I'm a veterinary technician and I got injured on the job. A puppy was handed to me and he started flailing and managed to take a chunk out of the cornea of my eye with his claw. It's amongst the most painful injuries I've ever had. I can't see to save my life, so I called my dad and asked him to take me to the ER. He picks me up directly from work. The ER is a madhouse. You know it's going to be bad when there's a handful of staff waiting on an ambulance to arrive. While I'm waiting in the exam room, I hear a page come over the system for a code blue. That means a patient has arrested, and it's an all-hands-on-deck situation for CPR. It's also a reminder that you're lucky to be waiting in an ER because you're not dying. I'm eventually seen by the doctor, and I get a few sidelong glances from the nurse at my scrubs. They seem to notice the large paw print logo embroidered on them from the hospital I used to work at, and they leave me be. After my visit, the nurse who's discharging me points down the hall at the door and tells me to exit that way, and then she gets back to work. As I'm walking down the hall, a woman pops out from one of the exam rooms on my blind side and immediately starts yelling. I almost crash into a desk. Our characters will be concerned mother, mortified daughter, and yours truly. Karen. Do you know how long I've been waiting? Me, gesturing in vain towards the paw print logo. I don't work here. Do you think I'm an idiot? Me. I can get someone to... We've been waiting for 45 minutes in this room. My daughter's tummy hurts. Do you even care about her? Her daughter, who seems to be about 13 years old, covering her face with her hands, looking a bit like she wishes the floor would swallow her up. Me. I can't help. Karen, slowly like I'm an idiot. Her tummy hurts. Do you people even care at all about how long we've been waiting? Me, in disbelief over how someone could be so clueless about triage. Did you not see the man come in that got hit by a car? Just a guess, but hoping to give her some perspective. Is he my daughter? No. Then why would I care? What's wrong with your face? Quit winking at me. Me, just struggling to see over here. My bad. At this point, a security guard shows up. He stands between us and looks at her, then at me. Me, desperately pointing at the paw print logo. I'm a patient. He nods and turns to Karen and starts explaining that I don't work there. I didn't hang around to see the aftermath because, you know, the whole couldn't see part. Some say her daughter's tummy hurts to this very day. Am I the jerk for making my son, who's 16, volunteer at the zoo? I'm divorced, but I have primary custody of my 3 kids, who are 16, 12, and 8. Last week, I took them all to the zoo, and it was mostly a good experience. The 2 younger kids especially liked it. But my oldest, he isn't very fond of animals. We passed a zookeeper working hard cleaning a giraffe exhibit, and to my surprise, my 16-year-old son pointed and said to his brother, "That's why you do good in school, I guess, or you end up scooping crap for a job." He said it loud, too. The keeper and the nearby guests surely heard. I was very embarrassed. I quickly led them away and left the zoo soon after, and asked him where he learned to talk like that. I said, "That's not even true. Don't many of them have master's degrees and higher?" But he said he thinks it's gross menial work for people who don't want to work with their intellect, and anyone could do it, referencing enclosure cleaning, I assume. I was pretty appalled by how he's learned to look down on manual labor, but particularly zookeeping, because as I understand, it's not even easy. Sure, it's manual labor, but I don't think I could do what those zookeepers do every day. I gagged from our cat's litter box alone. I thought the best way to teach him more respect and appreciation was to sign him up to volunteer at the zoo. So that's what I did. I found a Zookeeper for a Week program at a zoo not far from here, and I enrolled him. When I told him, he was very upset and said, "Why would you do that? That sounds awful." I told him I thought he had said it was easy, so surely 1 week wouldn't hurt. But he said, "Yeah, cleaning up messes is easy, and that anyone can do it, but that doesn't mean I want to." His father thinks this was too harsh when he found out. I'm guessing some of his sentiments may be influencing these attitudes, but I decided to stick with it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Making him do the work will help him realize how hard a lot of these jobs actually are and the amount of effort people put into what they do. The jobs we might see as undesirable are the ones that keep a lot of systems running. To make that comment loudly in front of the zookeeper is just harsh. Oof. My daughter's middle school class took a zoo field trip once, one of those overnight ones, and I was a parent chaperone. In the morning, one of the keepers led us around a bit and then stopped outside the Lion Night House. She pulled out a $10 bill and said, half jokingly, "Okay, I'll give $10 to anyone who can come in here with me and help me clean." So I and 2 of the kids walked up with her, opened the door to the inside, and OMG, we all turned around retching and coughing for fresh air. I didn't know it's possible for anything to smell that bad. The zookeeper laughed like it was nothing and said, "Just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. Guess I have to clean this alone. Enjoy the rest of your day." I don't think 99.9% of people could do that job like it all. Furthest thing from easy. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Gotta nip that attitude in the bud early. Not the jerk. That attitude anywhere in life is absolutely disgusting. That being said, my only thoughts would be of concern for the keepers who will be responsible for supervising him for a week. I've been in a situation where I've had to supervise people who thought the work was boring and menial and copped a lot of attitude for it. Not the jerk. Any attempt at stopping the formation of a pretentious snob is a benefit to society. Kid needs to learn some respect. You're the jerk. Your son is 100% correct. Let me spell this out for you and all the other idiots here on Reddit. We live in a capitalism-driven society. Becoming successful here is not based on how hard you work. It's all about how smart you work. You don't get rich working hard. Are janitors and fry cooks rich? No. The rich ones are those who use their minds, just as your son stated. You won't get rich scooping gorilla crap for $10 an hour. You won't even be able to afford a decent apartment with a job like that. I'm just glad he has his father in his life to teach him common sense, since you seem to be allergic to it, and punish him for speaking the truth. Am I the jerk for taking my son's access to games for deleting my file? I, 34 female, have a very spoiled 13-year-old son we'll call Junior. In our home, we absolutely love gaming when we have the chance, so Junior has access to all of our game systems. He mostly plays the PS5, but occasionally he plays the Switch. So a big rule I have for my Switch, he broke his on accident, is absolutely no Fortnite. He has it on every system he can get it on, but I don't want it on mine, nor do I have the space for it. I, currently at home with a very needy newborn who won't nap unless I'm holding him. This is after 5 months of strict bed rest while pregnant. As you can imagine, I've been getting a lot of time to play on the Switch, but when Junior asked to use it to play a game, I gave it up. Upon getting it back this morning, I went to play one of my games, Stardew, to find half of my games uninstalled and Fortnite on it. I was aggravated, but whatever. I was stressed and just wanted to relax, so I deleted it and its data. When I launched my game, all of my progress was gone. I checked my other games to find the same. Long story short, I had a stern talk with Junior and grounded him from all of the systems. As you can imagine, he was furious. He yelled, went to his room and slammed his door, all of which woke the baby. Next thing I knew, I got a call from my mom saying that games are meant for kids and I needed to get over it and give her grandbaby his games back. I told her absolutely not and went and grounded Junior from his phone as well. My mom is still blowing up my phone and threatening to come save her grandbaby since I can't grow up and parent properly. Am I the jerk? 13 seems like a perfectly good age to start learning accountability to me. Not the jerk. He's 13. He knows better. He has access to Fortnite on all the other systems, so the fact that he ignored your one wish about gaming is ridiculous. He's lucky you didn't just delete the games and his progress. Oh no, not the jerk. He broke his own Switch, broke your rule of no Fortnite on your Switch, and I'm honestly confused why he'd delete your data from your currently installed games. He should see consequences for his actions. Hope you get some time to yourself soon. Not the jerk. And I'd block Grandma from visiting. She's just enabling some very entitled behavior. 13 years old is absolutely old enough to know what he did. Password the crap out of everything and parental lock it all when you give it back, and he has to ask for everything all over again. I'm all for flexible parenting, but trust is earned. Not the jerk, but this is why it's so important you have a man of the house to prevent kids from acting this way. Kids who grow up in fatherless homes tend to run amok and lack proper development. I have a master's in early childhood and family studies because I'm very passionate about this topic, but you don't have to take my word for it. Just ask anyone who grew up in a home with a structured family versus growing up in a fatherless home. The campaigns began in the 60s to convince mothers to leave their husbands and attempt to raise their kids on their own. However, in the upper income brackets, this never became a common thing the way it did among the mid to lower middle class. The elite never forgot the power of the family structure, and it's why they still control over 99% of the wealth and power. Gee, it's almost as if men and women were meant to work together as a unit to raise smart, successful kids. Whoever would have thought? Am I the jerk for not wanting to work around my girlfriend's daughter's nap schedule? My girlfriend has an 8-year-old daughter with a heart condition. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. My girlfriend's daughter has very specific needs that can be hard to work around. She can only be with one babysitter, so if we want to go out without the kids, we have to go on the babysitter schedule. If we do want to bring the kids, we have to be at her house by 7 so her daughter can be in bed by 8. Day trips are nearly impossible because she takes a 2 to 3 hour nap at noon, so we either have to be driving for those 2 to 3 hours, we have to leave after she wakes up, or we have to get a hotel or a motel or Airbnb for her to take a nap. Yes, we've actually done this before. Then there's all of the hospital stays to work around too. She stays in the hospital for 2 nights every 14 days. I only have 50-50 custody of my kids, so it's very hard to get the kids together because of all of this. Sure, we can go to Build-A-Bear, the indoor playground down the street from her house, or out for ice cream, but you can only do that so many times before the kids get bored of it. I've been trying to plan a weekend trip to an amusement park for so long, but she wants to make us all work around her daughter's nap schedule. The amusement park doesn't open until 10, but we'd have to leave at 11:30 so she could go back to the hotel for her daughter to take a nap. We could go after she wakes up, so we'd probably get in around 3:30, but the water rides close at 5, so my kids would only get to ride 1, maybe 2 water rides, then another couple regular rides before we'd have to go back for her daughter to go to bed. She wants to do something that would be more accessible to her daughter. She can't go on the bigger rides or water slides, and her having to take a nap would take a lot of time from the rides and games, like the beach, and rent a place where we can do things in the house instead of having to go out all the time. But my kids really want to do the amusement park trip. I eventually told her we're going to do the amusement park. She and her daughter are welcome to join, but we won't be leaving early for naps or an early bedtime. She says I'm dismissing her daughter's needs, but I think she's refusing to take anyone else's needs into account. Edit. My girlfriend just texted me that since I'm unwilling to compromise and find an accessible activity that everyone would enjoy, she booked a last-minute 7-day cruise for herself and her daughter so the kids and I can do whatever the heck we want, but she won't have any part in it. Take your kids to the amusement park. Girlfriend and her daughter can join or not. You had 2 kids before this girlfriend. They should come first. They won't be young for long, and it would be a shame to miss this time of doing fun things with them. It's not their fault you chose this girlfriend. Don't make them suffer. I'm not going to call a single mom with a daughter with heart issues a jerk, but you can have a backbone and put your kids first sometimes too. Honestly, who's in the right or wrong here seems irrelevant to me. If you can't realistically accommodate your girlfriend's disabled daughter without sacrificing your own kid's well-being, emotional included, then this relationship probably needs to end. No jerks here, I guess. ETA, I'm updating my vote to you're the jerk, based on the fact, which you conveniently left out of your post and admitted to in the comments, that you're trying to split the cost with your girlfriend because you can't afford to take the kids yourself. Did you seriously ask your girlfriend to subsidize a trip without taking her daughter's needs into consideration? It's downright cruel to expect your girlfriend to pay for an experience her disabled daughter can't really enjoy, and to insist on a group trip that doesn't accommodate her daughter's needs. Confirm work or I don't get to do it? Okay. My fiance, 27 male, and I work for the same company, and this actually happened to him a few days ago, but thought someone might get a kick out of it. We work for a trucking company that has dedicated contracted work. I found the job posting, showed it to him, and we both decided to apply for it. The job posting was listed as home daily. When we did the joke of a phone interview, we were told home daily. When we finished our initial training and spoke to the account manager, we were told home daily. This was all nearly 4 years ago. Flash forward 3 years, roughly a year ago, and things started falling apart. The company we work for is rather large, and the account manager has very little sway over the contracts that the company negotiates with the client. It's done by a regional manager. So during the yearly contract update in 2022, the client makes more demands and offers less pay. The district manager just wants to keep the client as a customer and agrees blindly without thorough consideration. The biggest change that matters for the story is there were new stores added to the contract to be covered by the account, and 2 out of 4 of the new stores are not home daily. There were many other changes that happened. That's just the one that most directly affects the next series of events. Due to some other changes that drastically messed up the life of the office workers for the account manager, who had been working for the company for 10 plus years, quits without warning. We get a new account manager, Sarah. A few months later, one of the 2 supervisors, who had been with the company for over 10 years, quits without warning. We got a new supervisor. More on him in a tick. 2 months after that, the second supervisor, who had been there for over 10 years, quits without warning. See a pattern here? So now the account is left with an account manager and a supervisor who both have less than a year's experience, flailing to figure everything out. Back to the bit about home daily. About 6 months ago, my fiance started getting the loads that were not home daily. It took him a day and a half to complete one of the new stores. Day 1, he would go up to the store. Day 2, he would come back and do a super short run to conclude his shift before coming home. The first time he got the new store, he called the supervisor to ask about it. The supervisor was confused what needed clarification. My fiance, will I be getting home? It's a lot of miles for a single day's run. Supervisor, no, you'll be sleeping at the truck stop about 4 hours away from your home. Fiance, I thought I was home daily. Supervisor, who said that? The job was posted as home daily. I was told home daily during the interview, and I was told home daily by the previous account manager at training. Supervisor, well, I don't know anything about that. I wasn't here for any of that. What I do know is that Sarah looked at everyone's contracts, and nobody has home daily in their contract, so everyone is expected to take equal share of the new stores to make it fair. Okay, but I know there are some guys who are hired home weekends because they sleep at the operating center in their trucks and go home for 4 days every so often. Yeah, we have some guys who live out of state. So why aren't they doing the new stores since they don't need to go home every night? As I said, everyone is expected to take equal share to make it fair, and nobody's contract states home daily or weekend home time or whatever. That was never part of the deal. Fiance, I have a family. I took this job thinking I'd have time with them. I wouldn't have taken the job if I knew it wasn't in my contract that I'd be home daily. Well, you're free to get another job if you like, but without 10 days notice, you'll be blacklisted and ineligible for rehire. So are you quitting or not? My fiance angrily did the load, thinking it was going to be a once every now and then thing. Turns out they sent him twice a week, bare minimum. On top of that, most of the miles for the load are back roads, up and down windy mountainous roads posted at 35 miles per hour. We're paid by the miles. He drives an additional 4 hours for this new store for zero extra pay because the store is in the middle of nowhere with no major highways. He takes a major pay loss on top of the inconvenience of not being able to come home, sleep in his own bed, and be with his family. Then about 3 months ago, the supervisor messages both my fiance and I to say that going forward, we will be expected to confirm all loads and work, or we won't get loads. We receive our work and loads 12 to 24 hours in advance, so we do have some time to confirm them, but it was never a concern before, and we already had a lot of duties to fulfill that it wasn't a priority each day to make sure we typed a message, "Confirm store 1124, at the end of our shifts each day. The supervisor called us both out on it and said that this was an important part of the workflow process. I asked him why it was suddenly so important. He insisted it was always important. I told him that I had never had to confirm loads every day, and I have never failed to show up for work. And on the super odd occasion where I am unable to do a load, it's because of something like a flat tire or a truck breakdown that I'm waiting for repairs, and I was always sure to contact the office and let them know ASAP. Load confirmations are just busy work that is unnecessary on everyone's parts. The boss insists once more it is, and please just do it. At that point, I gave up the argument. Maybe 60% of the time I remembered to confirm loads, my fiance even less. Both my fiance and I receive angry messages on our work tablets stating that going forward, if we do not confirm a load, it will be assumed that we are not able to work the load and it will be pulled from us and will be placed on standby, paid at 50% average day's load pay if we aren't called in. Well, over winter, most of the loads for this new store canceled because of it getting drowned in snow. Now my fiance is getting loads for it again. He got a notification that he was supposed to go to this new store on Sunday. Guess who forgot to confirm his load on Saturday? Sunday he wakes up, no load, and an angry message from the supervisor. Because of your failure to confirm your load, it's been taken off of you and given to someone else who actually wants to work. You're on standby. Fiance rejoices. Tuesday, he's once more given the new store and forgets to confirm his load and wakes up to no load and an angry message that says basically the same and concludes with, "Call me." So my fiance calls the supervisor, and the supervisor wants to know why it's so hard to confirm loads. My fiance just kind of dismisses it with a shrug and ends the call. We found out Friday after talking to some other drivers that all previously home daily drivers are now doing the same thing. Get a store they don't like? Mostly these two new stores. Just don't confirm. If we have to confirm to get to do the store, we just won't confirm. Am I the jerk for telling my stepsister I'm not surprised her kid doesn't get invited to parties? My stepsister Micah and I have daughters a year apart. Micah's daughter, Gemma, is 9, and my daughter, Serena, is 8. Gemma has had behavioral issues since I can remember. When she was younger, she had constant tantrums, couldn't sit still, and would vandalize anything she could get her hands on. As she got older, her lack of manners and destructive behavior made her nearly impossible to be around, and besides that, she was really mean. She told my daughter that her modeling campaign photos were ugly and calls people stupid constantly, teased my mother's dogs to the point she isn't allowed near them anymore. She's just not nice. The other day, me and Micah were at our parents' house, and my stepdad mentioned Serena's birthday and that she was having a small party, 4 girls from her class, for a shopping and spa experience and sleepover. Micah asked me if I was planning to invite Gemma. Previous years, Serena had large parties, so we invited Gemma as a courtesy. I said no, because Serena is having a small party for her friends this year, and since the girls are not close, I was not going to force her to invite Gemma. Micah said I was teaching Serena to exclude people, to which I said that not being friends with someone isn't excluding them. This conversation went back and forth for nearly 10 minutes, and I was getting fed up of trying to be diplomatic because I know for a fact that Micah is aware of what Gemma is like. She complains often, so I didn't see why we were skirting around the obvious. Then Micah said that I should show some compassion since Serena's party might be the only party or play date Gemma is invited to this year. I just said I wasn't surprised. Micah asked what I meant by that, and I said that Gemma is not kind to the people around her and lacks social skills, and she's at an age where kids will notice that and not be forgiving. Micah seemed taken aback and said that she can't believe I would be so cruel about her. She got her things and left and is apparently not speaking to her dad because he didn't stand up for her over what I said. She has also said she won't be coming to any upcoming family events. My stepdad said I was right, and that while he finds it hard to be honest about Gemma, it's good that I was. My mother said that while I was right, as a mother, it's not an easy thing to hear about your kid. My husband says that I should have stuck to saying no to Gemma coming to the party and left it there because she isn't our concern beyond that, and I should stay in my lane. I'm kind of questioning it now because I am someone who generally does try to stay in my lane and not get involved in other people's parenting or family business. But the comment was topical to what Micah was trying to force me to do, so I'm not sure if I was out of my bounds to say it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Micah pushed for answers and she got them. I'm sure she was just hoping her pushiness led to an invite. So it's a So it's a mess around and find out situation. Is it hard to hear that your kid's behavior is unpleasant? Absolutely. Could this be a catalyst for Micah to step up her parenting game? I hope so, for her kid's sake. Empathy is hard to teach, but behavioral consequences should definitely be present. I'm going with not the jerk. I'm sure she knows that Gemma is a difficult kid and has social skill issues, but there seems to come a point in which parents will start ignoring it and treating their kid like they're exactly like everyone else, purely for their own convenience. It's not cruel at all to point out that a kid struggles socially to their parents. It would be cruel if you crouched down to Gemma and told her she was a horrible kid that's going to get bullied for being so rude. Even then, not inviting someone to a birthday party is not exclusion. If Gemma truly will ruin the experience at the party for your daughter and the others, it makes perfect sense not to invite her. Am I the jerk for leaving my sister in another country? For context, me, 28 female, and my sister, 33 female, planned a trip from the US to Portugal. I booked the Airbnb and hotel. My sister asked if she could pay later. I was fine with this. But a week before the trip is when problems start to occur. She still hadn't paid me. She owed me about $1,000. I mentioned it a few times and she sends me half. She says she'll give me the other half cash as she's a bartender. Well, we go on the trip and suddenly she claims she forgot all of her cards and essentially has no money, leaving me to pay for both of us to do anything. I don't want to ruin my trip, so I agree, and I believe she'll eventually pay me back. Now she's my older sister and I'm the youngest. I'm sort of used to my sibling bossing me around, but this trip, she was being absolutely terrible to me. I've literally never felt so put down in my life. If we got lost, it was my fault. She was constantly yelling at me. She said she doesn't pump gas, so I had to pump the gas every time. One of the places we rented only had one bed. I had to sleep on the couch. It honestly was the worst trip I've ever been on. I put up with it as I thought arguing would only make it worse. Well, fast forward to the day we're supposed to leave and travel to Amsterdam. She hasn't packed, so I try to wake up early so she'd have time and we can make it to the airport. She just goes crazy on me, saying she knows when she needs to wake up and to leave her alone, then goes back to sleep. Well, I decide that's it, and I get an Uber and leave. I also turn off my phone. Well, not only does she miss the flight, but she had no money to leave. She ends up having to call my parents, and they have to help. Well, now my whole family is saying how horrible I am for how I left her in such a dangerous situation. I thought I was finally standing up for myself, but now everyone is upset with me, and my sister won't even speak to me. It's really getting to me, so I want outside opinions. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'm sorry your sister is a jerk. You cannot trust her again. My boss expects me to work overtime because I don't have kids. I, 18 female, started a new job a bit ago. For the most part, I really enjoy it. It's just difficult as I need time off about once a month for doctor's appointments that I absolutely can't miss. Recently, my manager has started keeping my department 2 hours later than usual to help with extra work. At first, this was okay. I didn't mind the extra money, but it started happening every day to the point where all I did was basically work, shower, and go to bed. I didn't have time for anything else. Yesterday, I went to my manager and told her I'm happy to help with extra work sometimes, but I won't be staying every day. It's overtime, which I cannot legally be forced to do. She said this was okay, and I thought that was that. Today, she came to me and told me that she needed me to stay anyway, as there were people with families who needed to go home. I told her I also have a family I want to go home and see, and she told me she only meant people with kids. I told her I'm sorry, but I won't be staying later every day, and parents don't have some rightful claim to leave that I don't, just because they have kids. She told me that legally there was nothing she could do to force me, but that it would be extremely selfish of me to force these people to miss out on time with their kids and potentially pay more for babysitters and such. I told her again that I'm sorry, but that's not my problem, and I also have a life outside of work that I want to live, as does everyone else. Mine just doesn't involve kids. She left it at that, but I've definitely been getting side-eyed by people who I know have kids, as I have overheard conversations on our line. Ultimately, I don't care. I'll still be staying to help about half the time, but I do need time for myself as well. Am I the jerk? Edit. I live in the United States. We don't have labor laws that benefit the worker over the corporation. Also, the time I need off for my monthly appointment is usually the last 2 or 3 hours of the day the appointment is on. I'm never taking a full day or multiple days off for them. Karen destroys a family heirloom. Huge mistake. I, female 26, have 2 cousins who are 33 and 28. My oldest cousin, Jane, is married. My other cousin, Amy, just got married. I'm single. Right before she got engaged last summer, our grandma gave Amy's fiancé, John, a diamond ring to propose with. This ring is a gorgeous white gold and diamond ring that our grandpa gave her. He passed when our dads were teens. My grandma has since remarried and always said that she'd pass on the ring. I won't lie, I've always loved that ring and hoped it would be mine one day, but I'm also the youngest cousin, so I tried to temper my expectations. Mostly I was happy for Amy and glad that the ring was staying in the family, and Jane agreed. Fast forward to this weekend, which was Amy's wedding. Neither Jane nor I were in the wedding, but we both went to the hotel room where Amy was getting ready. She asked if we wanted to see the rings. We were both confused, but said sure, and what she showed us was a gargantuan, tacky engagement ring and wedding band set. I sputtered something like, "But I thought you were getting married with Grandma's ring." Amy just smiled and said, "Yeah, it is Grandma's ring." She explained that for her wedding gift, she asked John to upgrade the ring into this monstrosity since he didn't have to pay for an engagement ring in the first place. One of the diamonds was Grandma's, and then the white gold melted down to make one of her wedding bands, but the rest was all new stuff. I burst into tears. I was so shocked and hurt. I told her she destroyed our grandparents' heirloom. If she wanted a giant diamond to wear every day, that's her choice, but the ring was important to our family. Amy got huffy and said she had to finish getting ready, so Jane and I left. Jane was also upset, but had the attitude of, "It's Amy's ring, nothing we can do now." I told her I didn't think Grandma would have given it to John and Amy if she knew that she was going to take it apart. I found Grandma and asked her if she knew what Amy had done. Amy's mom had told her that Amy had to have it resized and have the setting fixed, but Grandma had no idea that it was made into an entirely new ring. She didn't say anything, but I could tell she was upset. The wedding went on, but everyone could tell there was some awkwardness between me and Amy, and Jane and Grandma are refusing to talk about the matter. Amy is saying I owe her an apology, but I don't think I'm in the wrong for saying she destroyed a family heirloom. Plus, the fact that she didn't tell anyone what she was doing and misled Grandma says to me that she knew she was in the wrong, or at least it wouldn't have been condoned. I feel like she saw it as not an heirloom, but a way to subsidize what she really wanted. I know the mature thing to do is to just get over it and accept that it was given to Amy and she made her choice, but I'm finding it really hard to get over what she did. Am I the jerk for feeling the way I do? Not the jerk. What kind of jerk takes apart a family heirloom? You can't be blamed for having an emotional reaction, and she's so trashy for what she did. The deed is done and it was given to her. However, if she just wanted the diamond, she should have, ideally, kept the setting to pass on to others, or even use it for a different stone. Perhaps ask Grandma if she has pics of the original setting so you can have it remade as an homage to your grandparents. You're the jerk. You put a blemish on her wedding because you're jealous. She was gifted the ring and used it to create one more to her style. It can still be just as sentimental to her and still be her grandmother's ring. Not to mention, you go on about an heirloom ring as if it's been handed down through multiple generations. It's not an heirloom. It was your grandmother's ring. You're the jerk. Did you really have to tell her this on her wedding day? And did you really have to tell your grandma on the wedding day? You couldn't just smile and pretend to be happy for her. You could have told her a week or a month later. It's not like it was magically gonna change back when you started crying over it. You should have just let her be happy with it, at least for that one day. Another new manager facing the consequences of their actions. I'll keep the details as vague as possible because I'm still with this organization. I work for a government department. We have offices and locations all over the state. I'm based out of a city that's about a 2-hour train ride to our head office. At the time, I was working on a team that had members working remotely all across the state, looking after policy, process, and quality assurance. Our old manager had gone and gotten himself promoted for being genuinely brilliant at his role. So our new manager, Steve, was hired in from the glorious world of banking, and he was here to whip us lazy public servants into shape. A few days after he began his role, he called us all to a teleconference to inform us that he wanted all of us to be at the head office at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning for an all-day in-person team meeting. He wanted to see us in meat space to size us up, understand what we were doing, and see where we weren't keeping up with the private sector. As I mentioned, due to the nature of the work we were doing, we were all across the state. So in person, whole team meetings were rare, and if they occurred at all, they were booked weeks in advance. We were all adept at video conferencing long before lockdown. Some of us tried to tell our new high-flyer manager that almost none of us were in the same city as him, and to be there on such short notice would mean travel expenses, meal allowances, overtime, etc. He didn't seem to care and told us in no uncertain terms to just be at the office tomorrow at 8 before abruptly hanging up. Now I should explain something. I'm one of a handful of union delegates in our department. I know our award back to front, specifically the sections dealing with travel, allowances, and overtime. So I engaged malicious compliance mode. If Steve wanted us there, fine, but it'll cost him. So I quickly went about emailing my team what Steve had done by requiring us to be in the head office at 8 a.m. and what to do. Because we'd have to travel outside our normal work hours, our workday clock started ticking the moment we left our homes and only stopped once we got home. Some of our team traveled overnight. They were entitled to overtime to travel, a dinner allowance, an accommodation for the night, and the same returning. As someone traveling in the morning before 7 a.m., I was entitled to a breakfast allowance, lunch allowance, and if I got home after 9 p.m., a dinner allowance also. So I left my house at 5 a.m. to catch the only train that would get me there in time. The train was running slightly behind, but I made it in time. So my first 3 hours of my workday down, and I'd done no work. After a brief period of us introducing ourselves to Steve, he proceeded to spend the next 4 hours telling us about all of the things he did at the bank, how he made so much money for them, where they had sent him as a holiday bonus, how we're all stuck in the past in the public service, the work he had seen wasn't up to private sector standards, etc. He had all the assuredness of a finance bro who had always failed upwards because others had picked up his slack. By 3 p.m., my entire team were into overtime pay territory, and Steve was just warming up with his non-charm offensive. Another 3 hours go by with Steve verbally patting himself on his back, deeply in love hearing his own voice, but all I hear is cha-ching. Steve decided that 5 p.m. was a good time to finish up. He stopped mid-sentence, looked at his watch, and unceremoniously said, "That's all for today. Go home now," and walked out. After I and a few others gave a few awkward shrugs to each other, we all packed up and started to make our separate ways home after doing no work all day. I myself got to the train station pretty quickly and saw a train was leaving soon that would get me home around 8 p.m. Or I could catch the all stations train and get home closer to 9:30 p.m. You know what? No matter how fast I could run, I just couldn't catch that earlier train. Darn, I'd just have to catch that all stations train and be on the clock for another hour and a half, plus have my dinner paid for. Such rotten luck. I submitted my claims the next day, 4.5 hours at double rate, my train tickets, my taxi fares to and from the train station, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner allowances. For me alone, it was close to $500 expense claim. The rest of my team followed suit and ensured that they claimed everything too. Steve tried to fight us on approval for the claims, but quickly learned that unlike in the world of banking, most public servants are union, and we'd raise heck if he tried to deny our award-guaranteed allowances. His all-day Steve Fest symposium blew a good $6,000 hole in his budget. Needless to say, while Steve was our manager, he never required us to attend an in-person meeting again. Video conferencing was just fine. He only lasted 6 months before leaving for new opportunities. He just went back to his old job at the bank. Guess he was the one who couldn't keep up. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter the truth about her father? I got pregnant in college when I was 19. Her father was in the same position. Prior to doing the deed, I told him if anything were to happen, I would be keeping the baby. He said he understood. When I got pregnant, he refused any contact with my baby or responsibility. He took things further by telling my friends and his family that I planned the pregnancy to trap him so they wouldn't judge his actions. This was not true. He paid mandatory child support, but it wasn't much. It was hard, but I love my daughter and I wouldn't change a thing. She's wonderful and smart, and she's my whole world. He reached out to me on Facebook saying he wants to be in his daughter's life. He's married now. I did some searching online. His wife has frequently posted about her infertility struggle. I was against it because he's had no part of her life. It was me who had to drop out of college, work 2 jobs, endure the sleepless nights as a baby and raise her. It was me that kept her belly full and kept her warm. He didn't give a hoot. It was me that endured my friends turned against me and his family's harassment and the judgment of society for being a young mom. And now that he wouldn't be sacrificing his young years, now he's finished partying, now he's got his degree and job, and his wife can't give him kids to complete his picket fence life, he wants the kid I raised for him? Knowing he doesn't really have to do any work other than to pick her up now and then? I told him my thoughts, and he got mad, saying that I chose to have the baby, not him, which tipped things over for me. I asked him to prove he thought about her. Example, a college fund he's paid into for a while with her in mind, or car money. He did not, which again proved to me he only gave a hoot when he couldn't make more kids. I spoke to my daughter, but I told her the type of person her father is. I told her he has nothing for her, and I was honest about the fact his wife is infertile, so that's why he's reaching out. I told her everything and reiterated basically everything I said in the past. I told her to think about it. I said I'd support her knowing him, but I affirmed he is not a nice person and his intentions are not where we would want. She chose to not know him. After I informed him, he got mad. He said I ruined his chance to know her, that I'm denying her a father. I told him he was the one that did that. My mother told me I shouldn't have poisoned his image to her, that she probably feels rejected all over again, and she's probably hurting. I now feel like I have done wrong by her. Am I the jerk? Edit. She's 16 now. Edit 2. If it wasn't for the infertile wife and lack of college fund or car money, showing evidence he had at least thought about her, then I probably wouldn't have said anything to her about what he's like. But to me, those were red flags. Not the jerk. You are protecting your daughter from a potentially harmful situation. It's one thing for him to give up parental rights and for it to remain that way, but what he's doing is treating her like she's some sort of a trend of the month. What's going to happen when he realizes she is a complex, multi-layered human with a lot of thoughts and feelings, and likely a lot of negative feelings towards him? I wouldn't trust him with properly taking care of an animal, let alone a kid. Couldn't have put it better myself. And to OP if she sees this. As a guy who was raised by a single mother and with a deadbeat father that we usually referred to as the donor, who was never around, keep up the good work. It's hard enough being a parent, let alone in that kind of situation. I would say one thing though. Try not to let your feelings about him cloud your judgment too much. I never knew my donor. I only ever had what my mom told me, and she never hid the fact that she didn't want me to have anything to do with him. I didn't get the chance to form my own opinion of the man, and for all I know, he was mildly decent. And there is a small part of me that wishes I could have met him before he passed, if only to see for myself who he was. And that part of me will never forgive my mom for denying me that. Your daughter may never get to that point, but for her sake, and the sake of your relationship with her, don't stand in the way if she changes her mind and wants to get to know him. Yes, he may break her heart, but at least she can find out for herself. Part of me wants to say everyone sucks here, because you did poison her views of him. But who could blame you for that? He didn't give a darn for 16 years, and what he did when you were pregnant is indefensible. You didn't deny her a father, he did. He's nothing but a donor and a stranger to her. Maybe someday she will want to know him as an adult, but I can't imagine he will ever be her dad. You're not the jerk. You're the jerk, but hear me out, because you need someone to tell you this. My parents divorced 26 years ago, and my egg donor would speak about him as if he was the same man from when they were married. She would speak to his character, tastes, interests, etc., that he was a bad man. She would speak of him as if he was frozen in time, as if while she changed over the years, he had stayed the same. My father, in no way, shape, or form, the man my mother holds on to in her memories. He stopped being that man within 5 years. He's the kindest, most generous, caring person I've ever known. It's been 16 years since you've known this man. He's not the man you knew, full stop. Your mother is correct. You did poison her against him. You weren't wrong to convey your experience with him, but you were wrong to decide that he is anything past that experience because the actual fact of the matter is you don't even know him. Even if you are right in the end, that should be for your daughter to discover. This wasn't an act to protect your daughter, this was an act to make him pay. And if you disagree, then you really aren't objectively looking at the facts you provided. His wife is infertile. This is catastrophically damaging to a couple who wants kids, not just the would-be mother. That's an entire emotional journey to process. You also assume he wants nothing to do with his daughter. It could be that his wife has deep insecurities about it because of her infertility. The fact is, you factually have no clue about this man, but have decided he's evil based off of your lived experience from 16 years ago. The whole post is me, and how you're the victim. It's not even about your daughter. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my girlfriend to nice places because of how she eats? My girlfriend is an incredibly picky eater. Like I said in the title, she eats like she's 10 years old. In fact, I'll give you a short list of the things she refuses to eat. Unflavored water, fish, excluding fried shrimp, anything with bones, cheese other than sharp cheddar, spinach, onions, garlic, pasta without red sauce, eggs, spicy food, ketchup, potatoes, besides French fries, pastries with fruit, citrus, sausage, or any non-American food. This compares to me, someone who grew up in multiple different regions of the US and lived abroad for a few years, so I'm a bit more adventurous when it comes to food. Whenever me and my girlfriend go out somewhere nice, she ends up getting the same meals, usually either a burger or chicken tenders and fries. We could be going to an authentic Nepalese restaurant, and she will get the French fries with white rice. To me, it's kind of embarrassing to go to a restaurant where there's a dress code and for her to order chicken tenders and fries. It especially bothers me since I typically pay. I end up paying $15 for chicken tenders that I could have got from the freezer section at Walmart for $5. Recently in our area, a very nice dinner place opened up, and my girlfriend has been dying to go. I took a look at the place and the menu, and I saw that it looked nice, but the food was kind of pricey. She said she was probably going to get chicken tenders as usual. I asked her what's the point of going then if I can toss some chicken tenders in the air fryer for her and not spend a ridiculous amount of money on it. She asked why I had an attitude about this, and I told her that I thought it was a waste of time and money to go to a place to get little kid food. She interrupted this as me calling her a little kid. I clarified that I wasn't calling her a kid. However, it is kind of childish for her to eat the way she does. I also said that if she's going to order food we can make at home, there's no point in us going anywhere. This led to an argument about me thinking I'm better than her. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Going out to eat at a nice restaurant isn't just about the food, it's also about the atmosphere and having fun together. Unfortunately, it sounds like you're so caught up trying not to be embarrassed by her that you can't even have fun. I doubt the waiters even give a second thought. You're the only one ruining the party. You're the jerk. Your post reeks of superiority, regardless of how you mean it. You aren't better than her just because you enjoy a wider variety of food. You're the jerk. She should be able to eat whatever she wants. So what if she wants chicken tenders from a nice restaurant? I bet those are nice tasting tenders. I order a lot of the same foods at places because to me, it's a way of not wasting money since I know what I like. Lots of cool stuff on the menu, but what if I hated and wasted $20? You say you typically pay, so don't. Have an actual conversation without talking down to her about how you don't like spending that much money on stuff you can make at home, or just switch off and she pays one meal, then you pay the next or whatever. I don't know, man. You seem really judgmental of her, but she's not an adventurous eater, and there's nothing wrong with that. Edit. Also, if her food choices bug you so much, you could ask her to try things she's not had before and are not sure if she likes by making them at home or buying frozen meals, so you spend less and you can eat it and save the leftovers for yourself if she doesn't like it. But honestly, it seems like a you problem. People's taste buds tend to change over time, and it seems like such a weird thing to get caught up on, man. Something tells me most of the people on Reddit probably have diets that consist primarily of tendies and fries. And juice pouches. Don't forget the juice pouches. Former manager made my life horrible, and I finally got her fired. I was desperate to join a new job after my husband and I were both laid off last year. When I was offered a new role, I knew it would be a step down from what I was doing, but the manager and the team seemed great, and that part has not changed. However, since my manager, Gary, was so busy, he basically offloaded me to another manager, Jane. I was supposed to be the connection point between my team and Jane, but it quickly became Jane micromanaging me. She would ask me to work through lunch, move or cancel my vacation days, call at 11 p.m. on weekends, and order me around on phone calls. She also made mean comments about my weight. The list of personal slights so long that it filled 3 pages. I would talk back to her, and she did not like that, and that provoked her even more. I only stayed because we needed to pay the bills. Finally, I had a mental breakdown on a Friday afternoon after she yelled at me for something trivial about scheduling a meeting without including someone from her team who I didn't know about. I was dealing with a family issue and couldn't take it anymore. I told Gary about the situation with Jane, and he was sympathetic and not at all surprised considering half her team quit. He immediately offered to move me to a different team under him. I was thrilled. Well, turns out going to the new team didn't help. Jane continued to order me around from afar. When I ignored her emails, she came to my desk one day and started loudly talking about how I'm not qualified for this role. Gary overheard and finally told her off, but the verbal mistreatment did not stop. After 2 months there, I abruptly wrote my resignation letter and stapled a list of Jane's offensive comments and CC'd everyone. Gary offered a bunch of accommodations to try to keep me, but seeing how she was still provoking from afar, I said the only way for me to stay would be for her to go, and he did not have the authority to let her go. Her manager was in a different country, and despite several HR complaints from at least 5 people, nothing was done. So I left, loudly and without shame, telling everyone exactly why I was leaving. Times were very bad for 3 months. There were nights we would eat slices of bread just so we could pay the mortgage and emergency expenses from a health crisis and a funeral. Even after he found a job, we were still catching up on bills and still are. I spent months applying to 5 to 10 roles per day, sometimes over 20. Last month, I saw a public memo about a big shot from a former company joining the company I just left. I used to work with this guy closely and texted him a, "Congrats, let me know if you need any insights on the new place." We had a quick call where I told him some ins and outs where I thought they could innovate. After this call, he asked me to join the team as his chief on staff. I accepted. Imagine Jane's shock when we had our first all-hands-on call. All the VPs and above were asked to welcome the new big shot in a giant conference room. In Big Shot's speech, he breezed over that I'll be his chief of staff, along with a few key names. I now sat 2 levels above Jane, and apparently, within the 3 months I was not there, the other half of her team turned over. Every single person had left. Gary was excited for me and said all nice things. However, Jane took the classless route and sent Big Shot an email about how I'm an unqualified idiot that used to work for her, how I tried to get her fired, and that she suspects I lied to get ahead. She didn't even try to be fake nice. Big Shot forwarded me her email and asked what this was about. I was so nervous and excited. Little did Jane know I was a director at Big Shot's competitor company and was already a level above her. So 2 levels isn't a big leap, and I worked with him for 5 years. I had an hour call with Big Shot and told him she was bad for the company culture and was a nasty person in general. But the evidence he needed was Gary confirming that her whole team had turned over. My prior resignation letter, which was still sitting on my desktop when I logged in upon return, and a few other nasty emails she sent her recent staff, which they were happy to share with us. Big Shot fired Jane on Friday. Am I the jerk for not wanting to have my wife's friends spend the night? My wife, 32 female, and I, 37 male, are friends with another married couple that's much younger than us, by about 10 to 15 years. I'm not a fan of either of them, but we both have kids, and my wife has become close with the other wife. The husband is on his phone 24/7, and we don't seem to have much in common, but I do my best to put on a friendly face because I think it's important for my kid to have time around other toddlers. Every time they come to our house, it seems to turn into an all-day visit. I'm talking like 6 to 8 hours. I eventually get worn down by the other wife. She annoys me. She never stops talking, and she constantly just says incredibly stupid things. I stay out of most of the conversation because I'm afraid that if I do join in, I won't be able to refrain from being very blunt. Yesterday, as the kids were outside in our inflatable pool on the front lawn, I'm not really listening to the conversation, but my wife taps me and asks, "What do you think about having them stay over some night in the future?" I said sure, but made a mental note to talk to my wife later about it. These people have their own home. Why would they sleep at mine unless they had too much to drink? We weren't drinking. Around an hour later, I realized through the conversation they're having that a decision has been made for them to stay over tonight. It immediately made my blood boil that my wife made this decision knowing that I don't like this couple. It's been discussed, and without really even asking me about it, just asking me about a future slumber party. For the next 3 to 4 hours, I was near everyone, but was not really a part of any conversation. I was upset. I took my baby upstairs around 7:30 p.m. to try and get her to sleep because it was too loud downstairs. My wife came up and I immediately fired off on her. I told her that she was a jerk for inviting 2 adults I can't stand to sleep over at my house, and without discussing it with me first. We argued a little and she went back downstairs. After getting the baby to sleep, I walked downstairs and noticed they were packing up their stuff. No one said a word to me, and it was maybe the most awkward 30 seconds of my life. There was tension in the room. After they left, my wife told me that she had come downstairs and told them that I did not want them to stay the night. My wife and I argued after they left. She thinks she did nothing wrong, and I can't believe she made me look like such a jerk, and how awkward it will be when I have to see these people again. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. These people sound weird, and your wife is weird for liking them. Would I be the jerk for not taking in my brother's kid? I, 32 female, have 2 daughters who are 6 and 3. Both my husband and I have very lucrative degrees, so we've been able to cut down hours to focus on being a family and still make a good living. I love being a mother, and I've always dreamt of being one. I put a lot of effort into being the best mother I can. People tend to compliment me on aspects of my parenting or how independent and responsible my 6-year-old is. I also got a younger brother who's 20, male. He got a girl pregnant about 8 months ago. He convinced her to keep the baby, and as she didn't want to raise it, he made her sign away parental rights and promised to take care of the kid. My whole family congratulated him on making the right choice. I advised him to rethink, but it's his choice in the end. A couple of weeks ago at a family function, we were planning on trying for our 3rd kid soon, and we will probably stop there as we only want 3 kids. My brother later called me and asked me to talk about something and if he could drop by my house because he wanted to discuss it. I agreed. Today he showed up with my parents, and between the 3 of them told me they got this great idea about how I should take my brother's kid. They explained it as if they were doing me a favor because they knew I wanted a 3rd kid and I could just take him in without going through a 3rd pregnancy. They also explained how my brother wanted to finish his degree and couldn't do that while raising a kid, so this was the best alternative for both of us. I told them I didn't know and that I needed more time to think about it, but that I didn't feel comfortable in the position I was being put in because raising a kid is not something to be taken lightly. They were disappointed in my answer, and after they left, the 3 of them separately sent me a wall of text telling me to make the right choice and not deny love to a kid just because I'm being selfish. I don't feel comfortable raising my brother's kid, but I can't explain a non-selfish reason why I don't want to. I like having biological kids. I feel one of our kids being actually my brother's kid would add such a complex family dynamic. I don't feel ready to face that, and somehow I just don't feel it's fair. It's so easy to get all the pats on the back for saving a kid when you are not going to be the one to take responsibility in the end. I'm helping perpetuate a family dynamic I feel has been going on for ages. When I told my husband, he told me that they're absolutely mental and should respect my reasons for not wanting to do something like this. But I still feel guilty because I am capable of taking care of the kid, and if I don't step up, I don't know what the fate of that kid will be. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your brother talked this girl into keeping the baby because, what, he was expecting his family to take care of it? No. It would be wise to sit down and explain to him that you are not going to raise a kid he and your parents decided was better off with one parent, as that was the road they were going down before they knew you wanted a 3rd kid. You want to send me home? Sounds good. So I was a sarcastic and easily annoyed guy in my 20s, and this often didn't help me get along with older or corporate types. I was working at a certain pumpkin-colored big box home improvement store one spring in the flooring department. It was just starting to get warm out, and the store didn't have much AC, so I was looking forward to a magical date where certain employees were allowed to switch their pants for shorts. Problem is that we had a new department manager, I'll call him Jerk, who was aggressively chasing a promotion to assistant manager, then store manager. He thought he could accomplish that by being a super by-the-book jerk and being relentlessly metrics-focused. This translated into a manager who was a know-it-all micromanaging jerk. Anyway, I'm scheduled to open at 5 a.m. one day on the fabled day of cooler bottom wear, and I walk in all light and airy and bare-legged. Jerk, who was overnight manager the previous night, saw me and threw a fit. "Why are you out of uniform?" he asked. "I'm not. I can wear shorts starting today," I proclaimed. "Not your position in your department. Who told you you could?" he retorted. "The employee handbook and SOP. I can show you if you don't believe me," I offered. "I know the SOP, and your department doesn't get to wear shorts. That's only garden. Go home and change right now," he demanded, face getting redder from my defiance. "Okay, Jerk, if that's how you want to play it, I'll be back in an hour," I sighed. "Maybe the loss of an hour of pay will teach you something." So I know better. The reason I know better is because I'm one of the weirdos who actually read the entire standard operating procedure document, the employee handbook, which is actually just a subsection of the SOP, and I really hate being wrong. So I check the SOP before doing anything different day to day. In my store, the SOP was like invoking God. If the SOP said so, that won every single argument. So I go home, change into pants, but bring my shorts back to work with me. By now, Jerk's shift is over, and I asked the new morning manager on duty, Darren, to meet with me. "Why? What's up?" "Oh, just an SOP issue." "Oh, okay. Give me like 10 minutes. So I swung by my desk and printed out several things. 1. My latest pay stub that included my official job title and department number. The company directory that listed the department names and their associated numbers. The SOP that dealt with when and which department's employees can wear shorts. The annual email from the regional VP confirming which departments could wear shorts. The SOP detailing the company transportation and mileage reimbursement policy, and a Google Maps route that mirrored the route I take to and from work, the total mileage highlighted. So I meet with Darren and explained what happened and handed him each page as they became relevant. At the end, we agreed that I was right on every single account, and he asked me what I wanted. 1. I want the time. I was turned away before I could clock in, so I want to be paid starting at 5 a.m. Feel free to check the cameras if you need to confirm when I arrived. 2. I want the mileage, because Jerk sent me on essentially a company errand with my own car. 3. I want this letter posted at the clock, like it says it's supposed to be. 4. I want you to talk to Jerk about this, because I told him this was SOP before he sent me home. And 5. I'm changing back into my shorts. All of that sounds more than fair. Get the paperwork for the clock adjustment and mileage to me today, and I'll sign it. The letter mysteriously went missing from the time clock the next day, but I replaced it every day until I happened to see Jerk angrily snatch it off the board and throw it away. I reported that as well, and the letter stopped going missing. He didn't talk to me much, and I was transferred to another department a month later. So all in all, win-win, I think. Karen demands I cook on Easter. I, 30 female, am married to my husband Mike, who's 32. Mike usually does all of the cooking, and it works for us. Sometimes I cook as well, but it's very few and far between. Mike's family likes to have potlucks where the women all bring different dishes. I am a good cook, but I don't enjoy it, so we've always just said that I can't cook. We've been married for 3 years, and this hasn't been an issue. Mike and I have a daughter who's 5. She mentioned to my sister-in-law how mommy makes the best seafood casserole while trying my sister-in-law's. My sister-in-law mentioned something about the comment to my husband, and he explained how I just don't enjoy cooking, so I don't do it often and don't want to cook for family parties. My sister-in-law told my mother-in-law, and all the women in Mike's family have been texting me saying I'm selfish for letting them do all of the work at family parties. So I said I don't enjoy cooking and will not be cooking for any family parties. We all went back and forth a few times, so I said the next family party, Easter this weekend, my daughter and I will not be attending then. My mother-in-law said I'm the jerk for not allowing my daughter to attend, saying it's manipulative and that I should just make the dish and suck it up like everyone else. My husband said he's staying out of it right now, but that he understands my position. He said maybe just make a dish one time to have peace on Easter, and I refused. So, am I the jerk for pretending I couldn't cook for all of these years, and for not allowing my daughter to attend Easter? Edits for clarification. 1. My daughter will still spend Easter with my family, just not my husband's. 2. He can't take her alone because he's on call for work that weekend. 3. We did try buying store-bought once, and it was never served on purpose. 4. Mike doesn't cook for these events because it's time-consuming making a dish large enough, and he works a lot. Making a meal for our family doesn't take nearly as much time since there's only 2 adults and 1 kid. Update. Mike and I have talked about this weekend. He reached out to his mom and let her know we will not be attending if I have to cook anything. I don't know what happened during their conversation that made him so upset, but his mom has since retracted her statement and said it's fine, they just want to see their grandchild. Mike let them know that since this was the hill they wanted to die on, that he will also not be attending Easter and that we will not be attending as a family unless the women in his family apologize for attacking me. We will be spending the full day of Easter with my family, which my daughter is happy to spend the day with her cousins. Mike said we will not be attending another of his family's parties unless I'm 100% comfortable, and if any comments or remarks are made, we will be leaving and not returning. Why can't your husband make a dish to bring to these potlucks? 1 dish per family isn't unusual for a potluck. Why can't your husband just make and bring something? Is there some curse placed upon his family that food made not from the hands of a bewombed person upon the holy day of Easter is not allowed or something? Not the jerk. They have no right to demand you cook anything. My husband's family tried to pull the same crap on me, but I made it clear early on that I wouldn't have it. Do I know how to cook? Sure, but we still do Grubhub and Uber Eats most nights a week because I hate cooking. Honestly, I don't blame you for not attending or letting your daughter attend. If he wants to attend this crap, tell him to go ahead, but you won't be there for it or allow your daughter to be there either. My landlord asked me to take care of his kids. I, 25 female, live in a large city and stay in a family's basement for over $1,300 a month. They've been nice, but we don't really talk at all, which is fine with me. I moved in around February, and I mostly keep to myself and just go to work. My landlord, 50s male, told me they would be leaving to go out of the country because his parent was in a critical condition. He took his entire family with him, which is his wife and kids. They asked me to look out for packages and stuff while they're gone, which is not a big deal, so I said okay and to have a safe flight, etc. A week later, today, he texts me and says his kids would be coming back, but not him about a week from now. He asked me to take his kids to school until he gets back. I don't know when exactly that is. The reason I think I might be the jerk is because I think it's an insane request to ask a tenant that just lives here, and I don't know if they have any other family here. But I also know we live in a high cost of living area, and this house is probably worth more than I could ever afford, so I don't see why it's my responsibility to take care of my landlord's kids. He could probably pay for a rideshare service or something else. For reference, the kids are at least 17, I believe. My mom says I'm a jerk for not being helpful and that it's selfish. I have a job that I can work from home and maybe have time to take them. I start about an hour after I would take them to school. I haven't called him about it yet because I feel bad, but like I said, I have a full-time job and live in a big city. If I want to go into the office or am required to go for anything, I had already made plans to go into the office next week for something I have to do, for example. I don't have time to take them because it takes over an hour to get there. I genuinely think it's an insane thing to ask a random tenant to do without consideration of my job or my life. He just said, I won't be coming back and I need you to take my kids to school for an undisclosed amount of time. Granted, I have not called him yet to hear more and the circumstances are out of his control, so I don't know if I'm the jerk and I should just take his kids to school. Not the jerk. Totally weird, and I wonder if he'd have made this ridiculous request if you were 25 male. I would just say no, but if you are inclined to do this for him, don't do it for free. Calculate a daily rate for this service that you are happy with, then add a decent additional amount on for the last-minute nature of the request, and make him agree in writing that it will come off of your next month's rent before you lift a finger. Not the jerk. That's definitely a ridiculous request. You're not a house sitter or a nanny. You're paying them for housing. They are not paying you for childcare. Looking out for packages is one thing, but being responsible for someone's kids? That's a huge responsibility and not something a landlord should ask of a tenant at all, honestly, but especially without offering compensation. He should have called you to ask and offered compensation in return for you taking his kids to and from school. Sending a text basically just telling you that this is happening is super weird. It's tricky since you live there and you definitely don't want to get on the family's bad side, but you are 100% okay to refuse this request and to think it's a crazy thing to ask. Am I the jerk for screwing my fence panels in so they can't be lifted? I've lived in my house for almost 3 years. I live on a corner house next to the road, a back road. A lot of the kids in the neighborhood play ball games in that area. This doesn't bother me much, apart from when they kick it against my fence. One thing that does bug me is how often they would come to the door because their ball had gone over into my garden. I know this seems like such a small thing, but I'm talking about 5 or 6 times a day. I used to work from home, so I would just go get the ball and ask them to be more careful. However, I recently changed jobs and now I work out of the house. My partner is still home throughout the day, but is hard of hearing and never hears the kids when they knock. She actually uses more sign language than anything or reads lips, as she really can't hear well at all without her hearing aid, which she only really wears when she's leaving the house. Anyway, since I haven't been home to answer the door, I found out the kids have actually been lifting my fence panel and coming into my garden to get their balls. I hate this. It makes me feel like my space and privacy is violated. I also have 4 dogs who are using outside when the weather is nice. I have cameras, so I've caught them doing this, and I have evidence, but their parents don't even seem to care. So I decided to screw all of my fence panels in so they could no longer be lifted up. Now, every night I go home, I'm greeted with a bunch of angry kids telling me their ball is in my garden and they can't get it. I just ignore them and throw the ball over without speaking to them. Yesterday when I got home, one of the kids' mothers was at my front door. When I got out of my car, she instantly started yelling and calling me a thief for not getting her son's ball. I told her I was at work and she started yelling about how my partner could have sorted it out. I told her I'd go get the ball, so calm down, and she said I needed to fix my fence as it was broken and the kids couldn't get them on their own anymore. I told her it wasn't broken and I had done this so that they couldn't get in. This made her very angry and she started yelling. I told her I couldn't have them letting my dogs out and also mentioned how they almost broke my fence once, and she threatened to call the police for theft the next time I don't get the ball immediately. So, am I the jerk for stopping them from getting into my garden? And could they actually call the police when I'm not even home to get the ball? Update. After reading through some of the responses, I decided to take action. I looked through my camera footage and found all of the times they had entered my garden or kicked their ball over in the last few months, and actually found one from January where they had actually come in and opened my rabbit cage up to find the rabbit. Luckily, my rabbit wasn't out there as it was winter. Following this, I went to the woman's house and met her husband. I explained what had happened, and although he wasn't yelling like his wife, he didn't seem to care. So I explained I had evidence of his son trespassing on my property, damaging my property, and evidence of potential theft, since he was opening my rabbit cage and pulling on my shed door. At first, he tried to laugh me off, but then I pulled up one of the videos on my phone and told him I was reporting this to the police. He stopped laughing and started apologizing, said he would speak to both his wife and his son and to please not involve the police. I politely thanked him and left. On my way home, I ran into one of the other parents and filled her in on what was going on. She immediately apologizes for her son's involvement. Her son had never entered my property, but he has helped lift the fence and kick the ball. She assured me he would be grounded and have his footballs taken away, and told me that if they ever do it again, I should pop the balls. I did call the non-emergency number and got it all logged and the video sent, and the kind lady on the phone informed me if it ever happens again, I can call and press charges. I can actually press charges now, but she advised me to wait, as they will only get a warning as this is the first time that it's been logged. This also means if they do call to complain about the theft, they will be informed of the logs against them rather than any action against me. I have also informed my insurance company, who assured me since it's logged with the police and I have screwed my fences in, that I'm in the clear, but they also recommend I get a no trespassing sign, so I will do that this weekend. Thank you so much for all of your help and advice. I admit I had absolutely no idea what to do about it or if I even had a stand legally, so thank you for all of the info that you provided. Not the jerk. You should laugh at the mom and tell her to go ahead and call the police. You will be very happy to have them stop by to explain the situation. If they come out and find that you're being accused of stealing when kids are throwing or kicking balls into your yard when you're not home and having to do without them for a few hours, they're going to be very upset with her for wasting their time. He went Pikachu wow face when I asked if he could read. I used to be a DSD vendor, which in the US is someone who goes to stores like supermarkets and stocks a very specific name brand of product from stock in the back, and then leaves to go to the next store, repeat. We're often employed directly by the name brand, not by the store itself, so I have loads of I don't work here lady stories, but a few of them are real special. Chances are, if you're someone stalking a name brand of snack cakes, chips, soda, beer, or whatever, you're actually looking at a DSD vendor. I was doing my usual thing stalking my brand and went to part of Walmart's racetrack, which is the main walkway in front of a department. A dude I would shortly discover was as dumb as a bag of hammers comes up to me, completely ignoring my hat with a logo, shirt with logo, cart with logo, not a store cart, literally a my brand cart, 30 odd boxes with the logo and armloads of logo product, and asks me where something that's not my brand is that's typically in the frozen section. Me. I think those are usually in the frozen section. Jerk. Which aisle are those on then? Me. Keep going down that way until you get to the freezer section and then look there. I pointed to the area of the store where the freezers are very obviously to anyone with half a brain. Jerk walks one aisle down. I don't see them. Me. The freezer section is about 7 aisles down. Keep going until you get to the freezer section. Jerk walks one more aisle down. Where? Me. Keep going a long way down. You'll see the freezers. Jerk moves one more aisle down. I can't see it. Keep going. Look for the freezers. Jerk then moves one more aisle down. Where? Exasperated with his incompetence, I set my logo stuff down and walk over to him, fully intending to say something to the effect of, "Can you not see the signs above the aisles?" But instead, what came out was a stumbling over slightly yelling, "Me, can you read?" It's now Jerk's turn to be exasperated, and he turns to me and looks at me completely incredulously with furrowed brow, mouth hanging open, in perfect Pikachu expression as if to say, "Did I hear you literally say that to me right now?" using facial expressions alone. I just turned back towards my cart and mumbled out, "I don't work for this store," and got back to my stuff. I really had actually fully intended to say something else after that, but just the question's silliness on its own gave me pause to laugh internally about what the next word should be. I didn't see where a Jerk ran off to after that, and on my way out, I told a manager for the supermarket and how I accidentally asked him if he could read, and she said not to worry about it. And she said, "I literally want to say that same thing every single day. I'm glad at least someone did." And that if it ever came back around as feedback against me, she would shut it down. Good times. Not going to give me a meal benefit? I'll eat at the office then. Some backstory from a few years back. I was working on healthcare as an HTA nurse, which around here is a nurse which travels around the city area doing health assessments which don't require 112 calls, 911, which is reserved for emergency and paramedics whom handle those cases. My job was essentially picking up the jobs which do not require immediate response and trying to treat the patient either at home or, if not possible, give instructions where they can get treatment for whatever was the ailment at the time. It was a job to assist people so that they wouldn't come to the ER with small injuries or illnesses, which can be handled in the regular healthcare center next working day. Also, other part was to go around and treat patients which had, for example, IV treatments regularly and administer the fluid treatment, drugs, painkillers, ABs, etc. My issue was that I noticed that as we drove around large area from one patient to another, we had to stop for a lunch at some point, and that we had to pay for lunch from our own pocket, whatever it cost. This is common practice. For example, paramedics. They eat when they can, and usually at some gas station, or somewhere where they currently are and have time to eat. I usually read the contracts pretty carefully, which came from my previous career as an engineer, where I had to make foolproof contracts and avoid stepping on traps, and our healthcare union had negotiated that if your work requires X amount of traveling, you should be entitled for tax-free meal benefit. I wasn't completely sure about it, if that particular statement would apply for the job I was doing, but I decided to ask stupid questions about it and eventually forced my supervisor to contact the management to get a statement for the issue at hand. From the management, it went to the legal department, and they began to delve into it, and it lasted for weeks since they couldn't quite deny it outright, but they eventually came to a conclusion that it couldn't be applied to the job that I had. I was a little annoyed at this, but decided not to contest it any more than that. But another statement which union had negotiated for us was that if we have an office or a station and social space where you warm up your meal, microwave, coffee maker, etc., we're entitled to have lunch break of 30 minutes per day at the regular office where I leave every morning. Just a normal thing, which, if backed by law as well around here, lunch is holier than holy if one can say so. I mentioned earlier that our area was rather large, so if I was working on northern parts, for example, it could take 2 hours to drive there, spend 4 hours with patients around that area, and then drive back to the station, an 8-hour shift. So I agreed with the bosses that I drop the issue with the meal benefit and will eat at the office instead, and they agreed on this, and I got it in writing email that I could do that. So not every day, but a few times a week when I was assigned to some faraway area, I jumped into the car, drove there, did maybe one patient call, then I had to hurry up back so I can begin my lunch break, then eat for 30 minutes and drive back to another patient and drive back. That's an awful lot of driving and wasted time. Eventually, I was confronted about this, and I explained that because I can't afford to eat lunch every day, I just have to eat my own cooking at the office, and that as we don't have the meal benefit, I am practically forced to drive back and forth so that I can have my prescribed by law lunch break. They were dumbfounded at first, but they could not squirm out of it at all. Problem was that the common practice had been for God knows how long, that paramedics and such just went along and paid their own meals as they never knew better. They had always had the possibility to go back to the station to eat, and I'm quite sure that we all were entitled for that meal benefit, since it is prescribed by law and union agreements in a way, that if you can't eat in regular way at the office, you are entitled for the meal benefit instead. But no one had really contested it earlier. So they were dumbfounded and asked me not to do it in the future, but I responded to that if they're going to get the meal benefit running for the department or not. Because if they are not going to do it, I am entitled to eat at the station. The discussion went on a while longer on the subject, but eventually they caved in. They arranged the meal benefit for every nurse and paramedic on the department as they couldn't find a way out otherwise and couldn't have us driving back and forth and not performing our job. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband after he put me on blast in front of his parents? So I, 39 female, just had spinal surgery. I have some pretty serious restrictions during recovery. The big ones are that I can't lift anything over 10 pounds and I can't bend over for the next month. My husband, he's in his 40s, male, his parents, who are around 70, came across country to help us take care of our kids, who are 4.5 and 10 months, while I'm healing. We don't have any friends or family nearby, and the in-laws are available. My mother-in-law can be really helpful, but she's also really spacey and dismissive of our household rules. Typically, I prefer to have a few days with mother-in-law to show her the ropes before handing things over. And even after initiation, I still find her feeding my son cake for breakfast and letting him use permanent markers over the carpet, so I keep an eye on her. Well, this time I'm not able to do that, so I asked my husband to take off the first few days post-surgery to help me with stuff I need and to ease his mom into working with the kids. I'm also really tired of being the bad guy with mother-in-law and would really prefer it if he could do more of the limit setting. He knows this. Today, day 2 post-op, I'm able to be up a bit more, and each time I find my husband is nowhere to be found while mother-in-law is doing all the work with the baby and the 4-year-old is running wild. Anyway, I went to lay down and rest. I was down for maybe 20 minutes and all I hear is the baby crying. So I get out of bed to see what's up. Mother-in-law is trying to soothe the teething baby by tossing her into the air and yelling "woo" into her face really loudly. And my husband is playing video games in the basement, again. So I go down and tell him that the baby has been crying for a while. I reminded him that he's supposed to be in charge of helping his parents take care of the kids, that he should be upstairs with them. He got upset that I was pulling him away from his video game, and I told him he could do what he wanted after the baby went to bed in an hour. So he comes upstairs. Between when I went down to talk to him and when he came upstairs, mother-in-law gave the baby a teething ring and baby calmed down. My husband turns to me right in front of his mom and says, "Well, it looks like she's calm now." I shoot him dagger eyes trying to cut him off, but he continued. And she doesn't seem like she's been crying for half an hour. Now I'm upset. I tell him we need to chat in the bedroom. I lost it. I was yelling at him pretty loudly, asking him why he would put me on the spot like that I was trying to be discreet and had explained to him what I wanted from him while we were alone. I yelled that I was upset because he was taking his anger out on me because I took him away from his video game to care for the baby, and he got petty, making me look like a jerk in front of his mom. That I'm supposed to be in bed, but I'm having to micromanage a husband who thinks he's on vacation now that mom is here to take care of everything. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk, not even a little bit. Your husband is behaving like a kid. He weaponized incompetence and tried to gaslight you into making you believe you're the unreasonable one. You aren't. This is your time for healing and recovery, and he had one job. He failed. He's embarrassed, and it's all your fault now. Sarcasm. Not the jerk. Ship the grandparents home and hire a healthcare aide for you and a nanny for the kids. Tell hubby to go back to work because he's stressing you out. OP. A girl can dream. Heck, send him back to work, them away, and hire a babysitter. Might be a little more work on the front end, but it's far more likely that work pays off in someone following basic reason. Not the jerk. Big red flag. First, he's prioritizing video games over your kid, then proceeds to play the victim and tries to gaslight you into feeling guilty. Take your kid and leave this man. Not the jerk, but almost. You said it yourself. You are micromanaging. No, they won't do things like you would, but everyone will survive. Take care of yourself and let the other adults take care of the kids in whatever way they will. Your husband's mother will get him if she needs him. They both will consult with you when they run out of ideas. When you get back on your feet, you can get back to doing everything your way. Different isn't wrong. I maliciously complied with my boss's absurd demands and got sweet revenge. Background. I work for a company that has a strict dress code policy. We're supposed to wear business formal attire at all times, and that includes wearing a tie. Now, I'm not a big fan of ties. I find them uncomfortable and unnecessary, but I understand that they're part of the dress code, so I wear them anyway. One day, my boss came up to me and told me that he didn't think my tie was appropriate. Apparently, it was a little too flashy for his taste. He demanded that I go home and change it immediately. I was a little taken aback, but I complied. I went home, changed my tie, and came back to work. The next day, my boss came up to me again and said that my new tie wasn't appropriate either. He said it was too plain and that I needed to wear something more interesting. I was starting to get frustrated at this point, but I complied again. I went home, searched through my ties, and found the most obnoxiously loud tie I could find. The following day, I showed up to work wearing the obnoxious tie. My boss looked at me and shook his head, clearly annoyed. He told me it wasn't appropriate either and demanded that I go home and change it again. That's when I decided to engage in some malicious compliance. I went home, changed my tie again, but this time I came back wearing a bow tie. Not just any bow tie, mind you, but a bright pink, sparkly bow tie. I strutted into the office, feeling like a boss. My boss's face turned bright red when he saw me. He demanded that I take off the bow tie and put on a regular tie, but I just smiled sweetly and reminded him that he had specifically said that I needed to wear something more interesting. And there was nothing more interesting than a bright pink sparkly bow tie. To make a long story short, my boss eventually gave up and let me wear the bow tie. And you know what? It became kind of a running joke around the office. People started complimenting me on my interesting fashion choices, and my boss just had to grin and bear it. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that my wife and I do not want them renaming our kids? My wife and I welcomed twins in November. We struggled to have kids for a long time, 9 years, and had our twins via IVF. It was a long battle to have our babies, and when we chose their names, it was something we not only took seriously, but poured a lot of love into, because we knew they would be the only kids we would name. We chose the first names Ezra and Esme for the twins. Their middle names are more uncommon, so we won't share. But what I will say is part of what went into the choice for these names was the length. Growing up, I had a long last name, 10 letters, and my parents gave me very formal and lengthy first and middle names, Frederick Lawrence, and I always found my name very stuffy and old-fashioned. I go by a nickname derived from my middle name now. I also took my wife's much simpler last name when we got married. So we announced the name of our twins when they were a day old And when we announced the names, we were aware my parents might not be in love with them. But I stupidly believed the twins being born would be enough of a deterrent for a negative comment. About a week after they were born, my parents asked what kind of names they had and how could we give them such juvenile and incomplete names. I told them they were neither of those things, and they needed to be more careful about how they spoke about their grandchildren's names. I thought they had listened, but then in January, they started calling them Winifred and Douglas. At first, we weren't positive they were talking about the twins, but then we were celebrating my niece's 10th birthday, and my parents directly addressed my daughter as Winifred, and I knew it was them they were talking to. I told them those were not their names. They said those were nicknames they had given them, and everyone has a nickname, that it's not like we gave them names that could lend themselves to nicknames. I said Ezzy and Essie if they really wanted nicknames. They ignored me, and they continued to use the nicknames. So we decided not to be around, because on top of that, they were telling my siblings that the names they had chosen were better for my kids. My siblings thought they were crazy. My parents tried to see the kids a few times since, and I always told them no. They asked why, and I told them they do not get to see our kids if all they can do is insult their names. My parents accused me of trying to control them and said nicknames are a part of life. I told them what they had done wasn't giving a nickname, it was renaming my kids in their own heads, and my wife and I do not want them renaming them. I also said we will not further encourage the use of the nicknames they gave them. My parents said if I had stuck to the family way of naming babies, none of this would be happening, and they said I was being unfair to them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What your parents are doing is bizarre. You can't just make up completely different names for people because you don't like them. It's disrespectful to you and confusing for the kids. I wouldn't want to be around them either. Too young to do my job? Okay. Back in my college days in the late 90s, I worked in my college alumni communication center. In reality, it's a call center where college students work to ask the low-giving alumni for money. The college had professional folks to handle the big mega donors. I, luckily, wasn't a student caller, which seemed awful. I, a sophomore, was, and this was the actual job title, data entry. A quick sidebar. We also had a couple of call coaches who were seniors who would monitor the callers and give them feedback on how to do a better job at asking alumni for money. Typically donations in the $100 to $250 range. When callers made a call, they recorded the outcome of the call on a sheet of paper. I would then collect those sheets and then go to the sole computer in the call center and record the data. Most of the results I entered would be no answer or left a message on a voice machine. Sometimes we got a donation. So I would enter that caller outcome into the computer and somewhere else. The alumni department would generate a donation envelope that was mailed to the alumnus, so the alumnus could then mail a check back to us. Now, about 10% of the donations would be by credit card. At the end of the night, after the callers left, I would spend about 30 minutes processing the credit cards through this dial-up credit card machine. I did this without issue for 2 months, September and October. Now enters Karen, the new boss lady over the call center. She finally notices the extra 30 minutes on my timesheet each day and asks me about it sometime in late October. I tell her that I process the credit cards after everyone leaves for the night. That's how I was trained by the previous data entry person. This upsets Karen, who says I'm far too young to be handling credit card information. Makes clear that I am to stick to my job of only entering the caller's data. Period. End of story. Data entry only. No handling the money. The money is to be handled only by the grown-ups. To be perfectly clear, these were credit card numbers handwritten on a sheet of paper. Absolutely no cash money involved on my end. So, you got it, condescending Karen. I stopped processing the credit card donations. I set them in a pile at the end of the night, right by the credit card machine, and with each passing night, the pile grows and grows. November ends, and this pile is now 250 pages or so thick. It also wasn't my job to ask questions like, who's processing the credit card sheets? Since the month ended and no credit cards were processed, Karen absolutely failed to hit her fundraising goals. She starts to berate the call coaches and the callers for not doing a good enough job. Karen starts spending more time in the call center, watching everything and everyone like a hawk. I continue to do exactly what I was told to. One day, she would offer a prize, like a college hat, and then the next, a long lecture about how everyone shouldn't be lazy. Over the course of December, I keep adding to the pile of unprocessed credit cards. It's a good 500 pages thick by now. Compared to the massive piles of sheets of no answer and left a message, it's not very noticeable. Naturally, someone in the alumni department has noticed that the donations coming in are down about 25% over November and December. This results in me coming back from Christmas break, where I get to meet Cool Chad, the new boss dude over the call center. He asks if my job includes processing credit cards. I told him Karen told me not to, but I was trained to process them. In fact, I'm the only one who has been trained on how to process them. He says, "Cool, please do process the credit cards." Cool Chad asks if there are any unprocessed credit card sheets. Oh yeah, there are. Cool Chad then asks me if I could get this done over the next couple of weeks. Oh sure, no problem. I spent several hours over a couple of Saturdays processing the credit cards. Cool Chad has the absolute best January ever in the history of the call center. The quotes are paraphrasing. It's been over 25 years. Why is Cool Chad Cool Chad? In February, Cool Chad gave me a raise from $8 an hour to $10 an hour. Thanks, Cool Chad. Karen demands I buy her a second home. My husband and I moved out of our home state almost 5 years ago to start our careers. We were lucky enough to find affordable living arrangements in a neighboring state and were able to buy our own home within a year. Despite our student loan debts, we were responsible with our money and didn't have any additional payments other than our mortgage. We both worked 6 to 7 days a week to maintain our financial stability and pay off our loans, and we don't have kids yet because we're trying to pay down our debts. We have about $280,000 in school debt plus our mortgage, which is about $176,000. However, recently my mother-in-law has been pushing for us to buy a house in our home state that she can use for her occasional visits, which are about 4 to 5 times a year. She wants us to split the mortgage payments between the two of us, but we can't afford this additional expense, especially if we plan to start a family soon. Moreover, we barely have time to maintain our own home, let alone a second one, and renting it out when it's not in use could be an even bigger headache. When my husband brought up the idea of splitting the mortgage payment with me, I immediately put the brakes on it. We needed to take a good hard look at our finances before committing to anything. My husband had never seen what a monthly student loan payment looks like since our federal loans have been frozen since he graduated, and I had been paying mine off even during lockdown. I reminded him that we both work too much already and that I would prefer spending quality time together rather than him working more to make payments for an extra house. My mother-in-law did not take kindly to my refusal and has been cold towards me ever since. However, my husband has agreed to seek financial advice to see the bigger picture. I'm hoping that we can find a solution that works for all parties involved without jeopardizing our financial stability or our future plans to start a family. Long-winded, I know. So, am I the jerk? She only wants to use it when she comes to visit, which is about 4 or 5 times a year? What a horrible waste of money. They have these things called hotels, motels, Airbnbs, etc. Not the jerk. Mother-in-law did not appreciate you not agreeing? Mother-in-law is a huge narcissist to expect you to pay and put her up in a house of luxury when you are a struggling early career family. Do not do this, die on this hill. Not the jerk. Your husband is a jerk for letting his mom think even for a second that this would be a possibility before discussing it with you and the two of you running the numbers together. You're not the bad guy for pointing out the obvious. You two cannot afford to take on additional debt or expenses. He needs to go back to his mother and make it clear that this is not financially feasible and that you are not to blame. The fact that he even considered paying half of the mortgage for his mom to get a second home while you two are nowhere near paying off your first or your student loans is baffling to me. Is he that bad with money or that much of a mama's boy? Either way, pump the brakes on having kids until you two have a very serious talk about finances. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend I told you so after her friend tried to get with her? My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year now. My girlfriend has more than a few guy friends, and I'm not one of those guys that thinks men and women can't be friends. However, with 2 of these guys, it's very clear that they want more than just friendship from her. Like clear as day, to the point where I don't get how she doesn't see it. If I can notice just by the weird energy they try to exude when I'm present, she should be able to get it too, right? Wrong. Anytime I've pointed this out, she gets upset with me. She tells me that I am being jealous and reading into things that aren't there. I argue back that I'm just letting her know, and as a guy, I can probably tell much better than she can realize for herself. So, 2 nights ago, she was hanging out with her friends, and this guy was present. From what she told me, they were all drinking, and he said some things that implied he'd want to get with her. She was made uncomfortable by this, and the night ended shortly after. Fast forward to yesterday morning, she got a series of texts apologizing for what he said, and then backpedaling and saying he would treat her so much better than me, and she's wasting her time with me. She of course said no and was upset with him. After she told me, I just read the texts and simply said, "Wow, who could have seen this coming?" a bit sarcastically. This set her off and she got mad. She said that I was being such a huge jerk to her and she had no way of seeing this coming. She's been upset with me since. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. So someone made your girlfriend uncomfortable, overstepped boundaries. She did everything right, told him to get lost, and instead of comforting her and making sure she's okay, you scold her? Are you insane? She lost a friend, and you tell her she deserved it? Huge jerk. Where was the scolding? He was insensitive, yes. That's not equal to a scolding. He didn't accuse her of doing anything wrong. He was unsurprised and insensitive to her being surprised. It wasn't so much a scolding, but an "I told you so," which in my opinion is much worse, because you can at least pretend that a scolding comes from a place of concern. An "I told you so" is pretty obviously born out of satisfaction of being right, regardless of how the other person was affected. Not the jerk. But come on, man, there was no need to gloat. She's probably also sad that someone she thought of as a friend disrespected her relationship and basically only wanted to hang around with her just to date her. Not the jerk. Most people are saying you're the jerk for the "wow, who could have seen this coming?" But the fact is, you were right, and nowhere in your story did she affirm that you had been right all along. If she had said, "OP, you were right, and I shouldn't have dismissed your perspective so quickly," you probably wouldn't have felt any need to say, "I told you so." What's most important now is that you both work together so that in the future you're playing on the same team instead of me versus her. Not the jerk. Actual men in real life will tell you that you're 100% correct. Most of these guys on Reddit, their opinions don't really count since most of them have never had a girlfriend and they all just compete for karma points on here. But my advice to you, break up with her now. Find someone who's smart enough to know that all of her would-be guy friends are just hoping and waiting for an opportunity to hook up. Find someone who understands how guys actually operate and who isn't looking for attention from dudes as a source of validation. That's how I knew my wife was the one when we met. We both worked at Target at the time, and I kept trying to get her to hang out with me as friends, but she kept turning me down, saying she never hung out with one-on-one guys because they always just tried to get with her. Well, once I asked her if we could try actually dating each other, since that was what I really wanted, she agreed and we were official within a few days. Now we're about to have our 3rd kid and we couldn't be happier. Again, it may not be easy, but find someone who understands the real motive that men will always have. You'll both be much better off. I labeled all of the bottles in the house since my adult kids are idiots. I have 2 of my kids living here with me. One has graduated from college and the other is a junior. I have to purchase medicated shampoo because of a scalp condition. It's by prescription and it's expensive. It also comes in packaging that's meant to be stored upright. Not on its side and definitely not upside down. My daughter has her hair products in the shower and I do not touch them. My son also keeps his Axe body wash, shampoo and conditioner, and woman repellent in the shower. My son also keeps his Axe body wash and shampoo and conditioner in the shower. I also do not touch it since I have zero desire to smell like a high school locker room. I keep my shampoo in there as well since it's my house and I can keep my crap wherever I want. For some reason, the 2 of them cannot understand that not all packaging is meant to be upside down. They've already wasted an entire bottle of my shampoo by storing it upside down after they touched it for some reason. It all dripped out of the spout, which is not engineered for that. I talked to them both about it, and I explained that they should not touch my stuff, and that if they accidentally tip over my shampoo, it was meant to be stored with the lid at the top. I came home last week to find my shampoo leaking out of the bottle again, upside down. I ordered 500 stickers that say, "This side up," with an arrow pointing upward when the words are upright, and I put them on everything in the house that might leak, with my shampoo being literally covered in them. They had friends over last weekend and they noticed that the relish, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, everything else were all labeled. My kids were embarrassed when they explained why. They think I'm a jerk for putting labels on everything since they only mess with the shampoo. Since it is an $80 bottle, I said I would take off all the labels if they agree to pay for my shampoo. Thus far, they have declined. Not the jerk. My kids are the same way. Your kids can either learn to leave your stuff alone, put it back the way it was, pay for your medication, or deal with the labels. There are several reasonable choices there. Not the jerk. You gave them a chance. You told them why, and they still did it. Sometimes embarrassment is needed, and this was only in your house, so it's not like you forced their friends to see it. Am I the jerk for making my nephew cry on his birthday party over some gifts? I'm female, 26. My sister, who's 29, has a son, Eric, who's 8 years old. I don't visit a lot. We live far away, but I see them, and most of my family, at birthdays and holidays. When I visit, I usually buy Eric a toy or some candy, as he's my only nephew. To be honest, I like to spoil him, and maybe I am a little bit to blame for what happened too. It was Eric's birthday this week. I visited them, and I brought him a nice toy car. The car was quite big and had lights and stuff. When I got to the party, I wished him a happy birthday and handed him the gift. He opened it and loved it. He said, "So far, this is the best one," which at the time I thought he was just excited, but with what happened later, I kinda get the idea it was intended to be more malicious. Like an hour or so after the party started, when everybody had already arrived, Eric made an announcement to the table in which the adults were sitting. He said that I've won and that I was now the person who he loved the most because my gift was the one he liked the most. I thought it was sweet that he liked it. Then he told my mom that her gift sucked. She brought him a board game, so he didn't love her anymore. He also told one of his friends that next year he won't be invited because his gift was poor. He gifted him a set of dinosaur figures. I think this whole thing of ranking the gifts people got him was pretty crappy. I expected my sister or her husband to say something, but they didn't. They just laughed. So I told Eric that he's not supposed to say that about his gifts. People get him what they can, and he should be grateful with it. He then said he doesn't understand why he has to love people who don't buy him nice gifts. I genuinely can't believe my sister is teaching this BS to her son. His dad told him, "Yeah, they should give you all the best." So I then again told him that a person's worth is not about how expensive or big the gift they got him was, and that if he thought that way, then I will not be continuing to buy him gifts. Eric started to cry. My sister told me off because I made him cry, but most of my family and some of her in-laws were on my side and told them it was bad to teach their kids such things. Our mom was quite affected and I wanted to leave too, so we left after that. My sister texted me later to call me a jerk for leaving before the candles were blown out and for telling her kid he won't get any more gifts from me. She said I shouldn't make empty threats like that. I said that it's not an empty threat. It's a promise until they teach their kids some manners. Am I wrong for discussing this when my nephew was present? Am I being unreasonable to him since he's young? And would I be wrong in the future if I keep my promise and do not buy him a gift the next year we see each other? Not the jerk. What he did was incredibly rude and hurtful, especially when he said one of his friends wouldn't be invited again. I don't care that he's 8. The other kid was probably around the same age. I'm glad you're not enabling him. It's great if you buy people gifts. I'm a gift giver, but it's one way of showing love, and it's not a reason to be rude if the giver put effort into it. Not the jerk. That kid is lacking discipline and common decency. The fact that the parents are making excuses for it is just awful. They're raising an entitled brat. Your nephew has learned a valuable lesson. If he treats people poorly, then there will be consequences. Good on you for teaching him this when his parents could not. Am I the jerk for locking up my snacks and calling out the thief? I work in an office and share it with a couple of people. I like to snack. I eat through the day instead of having a huge lunch. I just have a little snack and watch an episode of my current show. I always bring it from home on Mondays. This week, it was delicious cheese, crackers, apples, cereal, and oh so wonderful Jell-O. A coworker of mine, let's call her Maddie, from a different office, saw my snacks and knows I snack, mentioned how much I brought and how good it looked. I said thanks and started putting it away in my drawer and fridge, leaving the Jell-O out because I was going to smack on that amazing strawberry jiggle. I left work early on Monday and had left my Jell-O out. I came in Tuesday and my office mate said, "Lock your drawers because people are trying to take your stuff." She's the real MVP. I 100% don't mind sharing when people ask, but to just take my stuff without permission? As an only child, that's a huge no-no for me. My office mates know this. They also bring in snacks for themselves, and we often treat it like elementary school lunch, trading snacks during our lunch period. A different coworker, Steve, came in and tried taking my Jell-O off my desk. Our MVP said, "No, no, no, don't take her stuff." Steve said, "She shares, I can take it." MVP, "No, no, that snack is from her home. If you want snacks, bring it in like she does." Steve left defeated. Maddie comes in. "Can I have a key to your fridge? I want cheese." MVP once again guarded the goods. I locked up all of my snacks. Maddie comes in a couple hours later, taking Tums out of my drawer. This time, our hero cannot stop her. Tuesday, I come back and lock up all of my snacks. I have to get up and move around constantly. One of the times I wasn't there, once again, Maddie comes creeping. She was not successful. She asks me why I have everything locked. I said, "Because thieves come in and take stuff without permission." She got really silent and walked away. Though my mom said she might have thought it was okay since I share and said I was a jerk. Reddit, am I? Isn't it basic human knowledge that taking stuff without permission is stealing? Even if I share. Also, everyone has my number. If they're truly hungry, they can text me and ask. Edit. Thank you to everyone that confirmed I was in fact not a jerk. To those criticizing my post for bad English or punctuation, etc., English is my second language, and I type this out on my phone. Not the jerk. People assuming that they can automatically take what's yours just because you share is garbage behavior. They can ask you if they want something. Maliciously ironic name change. Around the turn of the millennium, I left university to a terrible job market. I ended up working at a big chain multiplex cinema in the city center. The management were generally terrible, but the staff were generally awesome people. As part of the uniform, we had to wear our name badge. Head office had a habit of making typos on these badges, or not sending them at all, so many people would doctor them with stickers to correct them. Especially white stickers to allow us to write on the name badge. I was one of those people. I've had 2 different badges, both wrong. After a year or so there, it was announced in a staff meeting that no stickers would be permitted on badges going forward. I asked in front of everyone, and it was confirmed that yes, even if it was misspelled or had the wrong name. At the time, my partner was also working there in the back office. She would often forget her badge and just take one of the spares that had belonged to people who had left, which meant she had a small hoard of these badges with random female names. Now, I'd been there for over a year and never had a correct badge of my own, but the badge doesn't need to be correct, only present with no stickers. As a result, even though I'm very obviously male, I started wearing these various female name badges with no stickers. For the most part, nobody noticed. I had a group of students at box office who asked, "Does your name badge say Rachel?" and henceforth remembered me and would always call me Rachel. On one occasion, I was talking to a manager when this group passed, waving at me, and called out, "Hi, Rachel." This manager then goes, "OP, why are those customers calling you Rachel?" Looking at my badge, this manager realized that it gave my name as Sarah. I explained my malicious compliance and was rewarded with laughter and compliments at my building a good rapport with the customers. Another one of my managers was making a random audit of the staff to ensure compliance and noticed my badge was not in my name. They tried to tell me off for not wearing my own badge, and I pointed out that I had never had a badge with my own right name on it, and we're no longer allowed to fix this with stickers. So I was complying with the rules to wear a badge even if it's not got the right name on it. This manager brought me a badge order form that day, but I had scored full points. One day, the head of the cinema noticed, and I told them that I had never had a badge with my own right name, and they wouldn't allow me to correct it myself. If they got me a right name badge, I'd happily wear it. When I left the place after 2.5 years, I was still without a correct badge and still in malicious compliance mode. Am I the jerk for not owning a coffee machine or knowing how to make coffee? So growing up, and even now, I've never drank coffee. Never got into it. I don't understand how people drink it. They say you acquire the taste, but I tasted it one time, thought it was gross, never tried it again. I don't really drink much other than water, and I don't need the help getting up early for work because I never built up a dependence to it. My whole family drinks coffee, and most of my friends do, but I've never made it myself. I lived with roommates for a bit, but recently got my own small rented house. I'm the only one who lives there, and there is an extra bedroom. When family comes to visit, they've been staying with me, which is fine. I enjoy them staying with me and enjoy having a house with extra room. This has happened a few times with people that stayed with me, but for this post, I'll use the most recent time. I still live in the same area I grew up in, but my parents moved down to Florida, as many parents who no longer have kids to take care of do. Recently, they stayed with me for 4 days, and it was great. Besides the fact that I do not have a coffee machine, and to them, that is somehow a crime against humanity. They say that even if I don't drink it, I should have a machine and buy coffee, which I think is ridiculous. I have enough things to keep guests comfortable, and if someone wanted coffee, they could take a short drive and get some from any drive-thru. My parents are one of those dead without coffee type of people in the morning, and they brought it up every morning. In the past, a cousin stayed with me, and one morning was like, "Where's the coffee?" and was upset. My parents bought coffee quickly and kept it on the counter, but one morning asked me to make them some coffee, which again, I have no idea how to do that. They think this is rude and that everyone should know how to make coffee. But I said this is like wanting smoothies in the morning and being mad that I don't have a blender. My parents, my cousin, and my aunts, 2 separate occasions, stayed with me and all made coffee comments. But my parents kept it up as if it was some mark against my character. I don't drink alcohol, but nobody's ever whined because there's no beer in my fridge. Edit. This is off topic, but darn, how much coffee are you drinking in the morning? I heard people say that 1 cup from Starbucks is not enough or convenient, and that they go through 3+ cups in the morning. I don't drink that much of anything in the morning. I get out of bed and sip a glass and a half of water. No judgment, just wow. So much liquid right away. I saw someone mention 10 cups. Not the jerk. Why would you spend the money and storage space on an appliance you're basically never going to use? Not the jerk. It's your house. It doesn't need to have coffee in it. They can pack their own coffee maker or buy coffee from a drive-thru like you said. It's ridiculous to expect you to keep these things on hand when you have no want or use for them yourself. I also don't drink coffee and wouldn't make it a habit to keep a coffee stock just in case someone decides to visit me. Not the jerk, but I don't see anybody giving some pretty normal advice here. It's normal and polite to have items in your home for guests that are generally expected to be there. It's also not unusual to shop specifically just for items that you know your guests like. For example, we don't drink juice, but we buy orange juice when my in-laws come to town. Coffee is so universal that I would personally have a basic French press around the house and would be buying coffee when guests came to town. I won't say you're the jerk, but you are missing some basic hospitality etiquette that nobody else I see in the comments is telling you. If you're going to host, be a good host. Yeah, but there's a difference between buying and storing supplies that only get used when guests are over and a $5 thing of juice that will be gone by the end of the week. OP's situation is not missing any basic hospitality etiquette at all in my opinion, but I would agree with you in a different situation. It's just that a permanent thing that won't get used to buy OP in their own house is not OP's responsibility. Not the jerk. A cheap coffee maker is $20. A cheap French press costs $10. It's an identical situation to the juice or the wine I stock for people or a dozen other random things I buy for guests. This is just normal adult hosting stuff. I feel like everybody commenting here is either young or doesn't have many guests. Marketing class group project. A few years ago, when I was doing my undergrad, I was in a 300-level marketing class. In the beginning of this class, we were assigned groups that we were supposed to work together throughout the semester. We were to put together a marketing proposal for a local professional sports team and pitch it to them as part of our final grade. Every topic we were learning in class was to be directly applied to our marketing strategy, and the whole semester our professor would basically walk us through from beginning to end on how to put it together. So early on, we divided up roles for each person. One person does market analysis, another person does the most applicable marketing strategies, another person does budgeting, etc. There were about 7 people in our group, so plenty of help to be had for the different parts of the project. Or there should have been at least. We would meet up weekly, and early on, a lot of it was just kind of roundtable discussion about what direction we wanted to take it. But as the semester went on, we started to notice some people were falling behind a bit. Each person falling behind apologized and assured us they would have everything done when it was due, but they were just swamped with other projects, classes, and BS. Come the final week, when we were to put all of our separate parts together and make it all mesh, guess what? They hadn't done anything all semester. They might have had a couple of bullet points on their subject, but it was far from a completed project and basically something any middle schooler could have lined out. 1. They're a professional sports team. 2. There are no other professional sports teams of this sport in the state. 3. They have a large stadium, etc. I was upset. I and a few others in the group had spent a lot of time doing the research and putting it all together in a presentable form that was sure to impress not only my professor, but the marketing team of the affiliated sports group. The other reliable members of my group and I spent a lot of late nights working together to cover for the other teammates' laziness. But alas, it was too little too late, and we were not going to be able to submit something presentable by the deadline. And I sure as heck didn't want a bad grade for the amount of work I put in for not only my portion, but for the portions of those who didn't do anything. I met with my professor during her office hours and asked for a deadline extension, to which she replied, "Absolutely not. I made you aware of this project on day 1 of the semester, so you have, quite literally, had all semester to work on this. Why would you fall short of the deadline and need an extension?" I explained the situation to the professor, who graciously understood what I had gone through. She asked me to provide a list of all members of my team, exactly what and how much to the project they had contributed, and gave us an additional 24 hours to submit what we could. She said she would take what I told her into consideration. Come the day of the presentation, our professor was walking around with the marketing professionals we were to present to, and I think she was listening closely to each person's part of the presentation to verify what I had told her. Some of us knocked it out of the park on our portions. Others very quickly glanced over the topics. It was evident who was a contributor and who was a leech. About a week later, once final grades were posted, our team group chat was flooded with, "What on earth? I thought we had a great marketing proposal, but that jerk gave me an F for it," type messages from a few of the members. I got an A in the class. "I always despised group projects, almost as much as I despise you, Reddit boy." Am I the jerk for asking to be paid when a family canceled? 5 months ago, a friend of a friend, Claudia, asked me if I could watch her sons while she and her husband attended a wedding out of state. She wanted me to stay 3 days, 2 nights. I babysit a lot to supplement my income and was interested. For overnights, I always charge my usual rate for all waking hours and then a flat rate of $100 per night while they're asleep. This covers me still being on call. I can't leave the house, and if the kids wake up, I'll tend to them. Overall, the price for those 3 days was going to be $840, which I know is a lot, but to me, this is a luxury service. I have 10 years of experience, I'm expected to clean, cook, and drive for kids' places, as well as sleep at their house. Unlike other jobs, I'm basically working 3 days straight. When I told Claudia, she definitely had sticker shock. But when I broke down the price and she shopped around, she realized I was the cheaper option. I requested the time off work. I don't get paid time off, but I figured I was making more doing this than I would be working 3 days at my other job, so I figured it would be worth it. I babysat in the months since, so I can get to know the kids. I don't have a lot of communication with Claudia's husband, Rick. Last week, he was the one to relieve me and pay. He asked how much I was charging for the wedding weekend. When I told him, he was clearly uncomfortable, but he still said, "We'll see you Friday." This Friday, I got a text from Claudia saying, "Hey, so Richard's decided he wants to take the kids to the wedding after all. We won't need you." I checked with my job, and they have no need for me this weekend as they found coverage. Basically, I'm out 3 days' pay. I texted Claudia and said that she needed to pay me at minimum what I'd make at work in those 3 days, $480. She told me I was being ridiculous, and the whole point is they don't feel it's worth it to pay that much. I explained that I took the time off work. We didn't have a contract, which in hindsight was stupid. I know legally they don't have to, and I'd have no case. I didn't say this, just said the right thing for her to do is to pay. I added if they had told me earlier and I was able to get those shifts back, it would be different. My friend that recommended me to Claudia says I'm being ridiculous. I pointed out that if I had canceled this close, they'd be reasonably upset and done for. Am I the jerk? You did have a contract, it just wasn't in writing. You're not the jerk, and you should try to collect. Treat this as a learning experience. In the future, if you have to take off work, ask for 50% deposit up front. Maybe have a receipt that specifies non-cancelable. Not the jerk. That was super late notice to cancel and cost you 3 days' wages. Also, never babysit for them again, even if they pay you. But don't tell them that until they pay you. Also, if you're in the know with sitters in the area, give them a heads up. Not the jerk. You were prepared to work for them for those days, and they canceled at the last minute. No, you aren't the jerk for asking for the money. However, without a written contract, I wouldn't expect to get a dime from them. No jerks here. You should have communicated better with them that you were still going to charge them if they canceled, and given them a deadline for canceling like most other businesses do. If you did not communicate to them that you were going to charge them, they have no obligation to pay you anything. Also, your rates are too high. That's the same amount I pay for 2 kids to attend a full-service daycare for a full week, for goodness sake. OP. Okay, and you also pick up your kids at the end of the day, right? I'm assuming they're there 9 hours at the most. Used to work in one. That's 45 hours a week, and mostly on the assumption that they're there that long. You may not send them the operating hours. Teachers likely get breaks or come in shifts. I would have been working 84 hours on my own call, so even at night, I'm still responsible. I was supposed to watch these kids for 3 days straight, no breaks, no time off. Yes, they'd be asleep overnight, but I was still expected to be there the entire time, tend to them when they were sick, etc. Honestly, it's pretty much a steal, because I'm not charging them my regular rate from when the kids fall asleep to when they wake up. Again, this is a luxury service. You want someone to stay with your kids for 3 days and do pretty much everything you would do, it's not going to be cheap. I accept your judgment on calling me a jerk, but I won't accept you judging my prices and comparing it to daycare when it's not similar at all. What are they getting that's luxury and beyond just normal expected babysitting duties? OP. Well, 1, most babysitters leave when the day or night is over. This is for 3 whole days. I don't know why you keep undermining that. I had to cook all 3 meals, again for 3 days, drive the kids around, take them to activities. They're asking me to give up being in my own home and sleep in theirs and be on call while their kids are asleep. For 3 days, I get no breaks. Again, a regular sitter gets to go home at the end of the day. The main luxury is, you're getting someone for more than a night. This isn't just put the kids to bed, watch TV, and raid the fridge. Not that I do that for normal jobs, but I think it's what a lot picture when they hear the word babysitter. They're doing everything a parent would do for 3 days, no breaks. That's a luxury. I'll always advocate for affordable childcare while the parents are at work. That's not a luxury, that's just getting by. But wanting to go to a wedding without kids? A luxury. Not a bad one to want, but it's going to come at a hefty price when you're expecting someone to work for 3 days straight. You're describing an overnight babysitter. That's not a special luxury service, that's fairly common. You do you though. Good luck. Karen demands I charge my son rent to live in a house that he partially owns. My oldest son, who's 24, is not my wife's biological kid. He was my son with my late wife. My late wife and I bought a 3-bedroom house when we got married. When I remarried, my current wife moved into this house with me, but I never put her name on the deed. The house was only in my name. My wife and I ended up having several kids and needing to move into a bigger house. When we bought our new home, she wanted me to sell the old one. I said no, that this home was something my late wife and I purchased with the hope of one day passing on to our son. I would make it a rental property instead. That was one of the biggest fights we had ever had. She insisted we make a compromise, but I refused to do so. When my son graduated from college, I put his name on the deed to the house with mine, which was another fight, but I felt he was the appropriate inheritor to his mother's share. I didn't share any of the rental income with him though, as I was still paying all of the taxes and insurance. At this point, the mortgage is paid off. I net over $2,000 a month from this house, which goes into the household budget. My son just got engaged and he wants to move into the house after he marries his fiancée. He suggested he pay half of the rent and eventually buy out my share of the house. I told my son I agreed to his plan of saving up to buy out my share, but instead of paying rent, he should just take over the taxes and insurance. We agreed to this. My wife is livid and says that I'm a massive jerk for dramatically decreasing our household income without consulting her. She likened my decision to financial mistreatment. I suggested we downsize to a smaller house now that our oldest two kids are leaving the nest, and we could rent out the larger one and be in the same situation as before, owning two homes and getting rental income on one. She called me a selfish jerk and won't even speak to me now. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Why even get married if you refuse to take anything that your wife says seriously? Maybe try treating her like an actual human and take what she has to say into consideration. There's no telling how many years this woman has been allowing you to be her husband, sharing her life with you, building a family with you, and even at this point, after all these years, you still flat out disregard what she has to say because you side with your daddy's boy. If she had known you would go on to pick your nepotism baby over her, I doubt she would have wasted her life with you. I hope she leaves you and is They always say that. I hope she leaves you and is able to get her fair share, which involves you selling that house and splitting the profits with her, not with your daddy's boy who wants to live in daddy's house for the rest of his life. Your wife deserves so much better. My brother married the mother of his daughter's bully and moved them into his house. My brother, 39 male, has a daughter, Piper, who's 15. When Piper was 4, her mom passed. My brother told Piper so much about her, and they had some special photos of her mom that were treasured. When Piper was 6, she started being teased by this girl called Nancy, who's now 15. It continued on for over a year and ultimately came to a head when Nancy tore up a photo of Piper's mom that Piper brought into school for some show-and-tell family edition her class was doing. From that day on, Piper did not like Nancy. Because of that incident, my brother and Nancy's mom met. They became friends, and a few months after the incident, where Nancy tore up the photo, they started dating, and they married a year later. Piper pulled away from my brother when she found out he was dating Nancy's mom, and even more when they moved in together and got married. Nancy was actually happy and tried to get close to Piper, but Piper wanted nothing to do with that. Nancy's mom mentioned how being sisters would mend the rift, and I thought that was kind of crazy given what went down. My brother only mentioned to me recently that he really thought Piper and Nancy would be sisters and would be close by now. But Piper doesn't want anything to do with Nancy still and doesn't trust her around anything important. I told my brother that's because he moved too fast to get that kind of relationship with them. I said he and his wife started dating and Nancy hadn't even apologized, and then Piper was still upset about who he was dating and Nancy being in her life more when they got married. I told him at no point did he try to make what happened better for Piper. He thought his marriage license would somehow erase the hurt Piper felt and the bullying Nancy put Piper through for more than a year. I said maybe if he had given it time, let Nancy apologize, and given the girls space where they weren't living together to interact outside of school, things could have been different. But you had one kid who was hurt and angry, and another who was eager to have a dad and a sibling after only having her mom. My brother said I expected him to let Piper dictate his life. I said no, not what I said. I said if he wanted Piper to be happy and embrace Nancy as a sibling, then he should have taken things more slowly to get that outcome. He told me it was none of my business and I was overstepping and I'm just his little sister. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your brother sucks and he needed to hear it. Being sisters will mend the rift is the kind of BS rationalization people make when they don't want to face how disgusting it is that they're bringing Piper's bully into her home, into her family. My brother said I expected him to let Piper dictate his life? Ugh, yeah, God forbid a parent be expected to prioritize their kid's well-being or anything. What your brother needs to realize is that, sure, he can refuse to care about his teenage daughter, but Piper is fast approaching the age of adulthood when he can no longer dictate her life. I think he'll be in for a rude awakening when his daughter drops him just as coldly as he's dropped her. Not the jerk. He shoved aside his daughter's feelings for his own personal happiness. I think it's incredibly gross he even started being friends with the parent of his daughter's bully, much less dating and then marrying her. Did they tell this lovely story of how they met at their wedding? He's probably permanently damaged his relationship with his daughter. And your brother is the one who brought it up. You didn't just say it out of nowhere. If it wasn't your business, then maybe he shouldn't have been talking about it with you. He's just mad you called him out on his BS. My son asked out a girl as a prank. I have 3 kids. Oldest is at university, so it's just me, my wife, and them, who are 16 and 11. All my kids are kids who have been raised very well, and they've grown to be people I'm proud to call my own. My son recently had some friends over, and things were going fine. I went upstairs at one point to bring them the pizza they had ordered when I overheard my son talking about how his friends owed him something for asking a girl in their class out as a prank. From what I gathered, the girl was someone his friends didn't deem attractive enough and a load of other BS. I decided to talk to my son about it after his friends left to save him from embarrassment. I did raise my voice a bit, but that was due to how maddening the whole situation was. The same thing had happened to my cousin when we were younger, and I saw how the whole thing affected her as she took on new relationships. My son argued back that it was just a prank that wouldn't hurt anyone and that I was going against him by listening to his friends' private conversations, and said that while he felt sorry for my cousin, he was mature enough to understand to not pull the prank any further. I didn't listen to any other excuses he gave and decided to ground him for 2 weeks. He said that I shouldn't have any say in this when the whole thing had nothing to do with me. My wife claims that boys will be boys and that it's something harmless. When I asked her how she'd feel if this was played on our daughter, she simply said, "That won't happen because she has good genes." Mother-in-law and father-in-law are blowing up the family group chat about how I'm hurting their baby for normal teenage boy behavior. So, am I the jerk? If I'm being too nosy about an act that has nothing to do with me, I'll take back my son's grounding. Not the jerk. Your son is a bully. Your wife sounds like a piece of work. Agreed. As someone who was asked out as a prank and still has scars from it 20 years later, not the jerk. OP, this is not a harmless joke. I guarantee the girl that he was talking about won't find it funny. Please don't back down. My best friend pulled a prank like that on me in 4th grade. 50 plus years later, I still hate her guts for it. It ruined my dating years because my self-confidence was destroyed at 9 years old. This happened to me in 5th grade, and I found out in high school it was a whole joke at the other middle school that a geek like me thought someone as cool as Matt would date me. I used it as a teaching tool when I taught middle school, but I still think about how horrible that was to do to someone. Same happened to me in 9th grade. It took me a very long time to trust again, and it damaged my self-confidence for even longer. This isn't a harmless prank, and it does hurt people. Frankly, I think 2 weeks grounding is the least of the kid's worries if he can't see how this could really hurt someone after what OP said. Wow, can't believe how many of y'all got asked out as a prank. No wonder y'all spend all your time on Reddit. That also explains why y'all have such twisted views of relationships and why y'all can't stand dudes. Look, I'm sorry y'all had these bad experiences as kids, but you need to move on and just go on with your life. I had bad experiences too when I was a kid. Nothing to rival y'all getting asked out as a literal prank, but I had my fair share of misfortune. One time I took my Pokemon card collection to school, and during lunch, someone stole the whole folder from my backpack. It was the hardest loss I've ever taken, and I still think about it to this day. But I don't let it control my life. I would have much preferred to be asked out as a prank than to lose my entire collection of Pokemon cards, which included my first edition holographic Charizard, which is now worth thousands of dollars. And y'all think you had it bad. Dude sounds like a jerk, but I do think we should drop Fs in the chat for that holographic Charizard. Bizarre safety procedures at work cause a hilarious Cobra effect. I'm a senior electrical engineer in the industrial sector. I started work at a huge firm a few weeks ago, and right off, my superior detailed what was expected of me every quarter. Among the requirements were one safety violation report a month. I thought, okay, I could keep myself from messing up more than once a month. This is a large factory with everything from spinning grinders to steaming corrosives, so obviously OSHA is a big issue here. But this isn't my first rodeo, so to speak. I generally know what I'm doing. So my first month goes by, and I keep everything nice and safe. End of month, one-on-one rolls around. Boss makes it clear, to my surprise, that the requirement is for me to file at least one safety violation a month. Obviously, I inquired how one could go about controlling safety violations, as they are inherently accidents, and if I had any way to influence their appearance, I would prevent them in the first place. But he just said I need to keep my eyes open, the violations will appear. Fine, I kept my eyes open, but honestly, everything seemed perfectly in order. Everyone else in my department were ticking off safety violations one after another, and I was nearing the end of month 2 with nothing. I would go on walks looking for safety infringements instead of working. Something seemed off, so I looked into the safety violations report Excel, and I was just stupefied. This was a list of the most unbelievably inane infractions I've ever set my eyes upon. I'll give you some examples. Infraction: cabinet door was left open in room, someone could hit their head, immediate mitigation. cabinet door closed, future mitigation, add magnets to cabinet doors. There were countless other esoteric reports like unexplained puddle next to electrical cabinet or stack of cables on floor. I couldn't believe it. These well-educated grown men and women just writing nonsensical safety violations on absolutely anything. I tried approaching one of the guys about it, but he just said to keep my eyes open. The violations will appear. They kept repeating it like it's a mantra, then changed the subject. I thought this was ridiculous enough, but then one day a report came in about a ladder missing one of the plastic caps on its legs. Immediate mitigation, plastic cap found elsewhere and secured in its place. Now I was the last one to use this ladder the day before, and it was perfectly fine, which led me to my conclusion that this man was purposely sabotaging company equipment just so he can fix it and then write his safety violation report. I feel like I'm in an episode of The Office. Everyone I approach about this just brushes it off, maybe because I'm the new guy. Anyway, I couldn't show up to my second monthly evaluation sans safety report, so I went to a random grounding cable, slightly unfastened the bolt, took a picture, and then fastened it back in place. I wrote a report about it, and the OSHA guy commended me in person about my vigilance. Is this a department-wide grift? Are the managers unaware of this farce, or are they just playing along? Usually, this would be a huge red flag, but everyone is otherwise really nice, and the pay is great. Anyway, ideas as to what I should sabotage next month are welcome. My brother chose a dog over me. I'm 28, female. My brother, who's 26, was my best friend growing up. He didn't feel the same way. I was a lot more awkward as a kid, so I often just followed his friend group around, even though many of them bullied me. He never stood up for me, but when we were alone, he went back to being fun and nice, so I always forgave him. When we were teenagers and got part-time jobs, I started buying him birthday and Christmas presents, even though he never did the same for me. Our parents said it was because he's younger and would eventually, but to this day, I have never received a gift from him personally. Now that we're adults, I call and text him occasionally to check in, and though he's nice when he responds, he doesn't initiate. I figured that was just how he is. I always put more work in, but he's my brother and I love him. I'm graduating from graduate school soon, and I invited my whole family out to celebrate. Everyone got a plane ticket and hotel room I'm paying for, and it's been planned out for months. The other day, my brother called me to say that he was picking up a new puppy the day before my graduation and that he couldn't make it. Something inside me broke a little. I asked if it really had to be that day, if he couldn't postpone it for a week or something, but he said no dice and to cancel his reservations. I said okay and I hung up. I decided I was done being in a one-way relationship with him, even though I always thought of him as my best friend. Later, I was talking to our mom and she was saying how excited she is to see us, and I told her, "Oh, brother's not coming. He chose a dog over me." She asked what I was talking about and I explained. She said she was disappointed but not surprised. Word got out and my brother called me, really hushed and sad, and said that what I'd said wasn't cool. I said I just told the truth. He called me a jerk and we haven't spoken since. I said what I said in anger and bitterness, but now I'm really feeling guilty because I've always forgiven my brother and I've never heard him sound the way he did on the phone. Am I the jerk? Edit, because I guess I didn't share some things properly. I didn't invite myself to parties or social events my brother got invited to with his friends. When I said I followed around his friend group, I meant sit near them on the school bus or during assemblies. My brother has a social life outside of me, which I was not invited to, nor forced myself into. I did not insert myself into his friend groups, just that when they were group functions, I would hover near them as opposed to being in a corner. When we were alone, we acted very friendly with each other, and we would hang out regularly, like playing video games together. He did agree to go to my graduation before I bought the hotel and plane tickets. I did not assume he would attend. If he didn't want you telling people he backed out of your graduation festivities to get a dog, he shouldn't have backed out of your graduation festivities to get a dog. Not the jerk, obviously. Not the jerk. He's upset, not because he hurt your feelings, but because he knows you recognize the imbalance in your relationship. He's also upset because other people now see how he treated you or now publicly acknowledge it. I'm not saying the following statement to be mean. I'm saying it so you can see how obvious it is to a Reddit random who has never met you or any of your family members. Your brother is self-centered and absolutely puts his own interests above you. Even your mother acknowledges this when you told her that he was not attending because he's picking up a puppy. She said she was disappointed but not surprised. I'm sorry. I can imagine being on the outs with your brother hurts a lot. This is a big step in claiming the respect you deserve, and I hope you realize that and stand your ground. You've done nothing to feel guilty about. I get that you still do feel guilty, but this outside observer absolves you of any unwarranted guilt. Honestly, I think everyone sucks here. You for being the clingy older sister that never took a hint growing up, and it took you until you were almost 30. Your parents for not noticing this and intervening when you guys were kids. Your brother for being passive the whole time and not being direct with you to give him space. Seems like a lot of unspoken emotions. Clingy older sister that never took the hint? Wow, just wow. For doing creepy stalker things? Like buying her own sibling Christmas presents, I guess? No, like calling your sibling your best friend when they are clearly not. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she was being childish and unreasonable for trying to make me choose between her or my mother? My wife and I have been together for 10 years and married for 3. My wife, Jane Doe, is 29, and I'm 28. Generally speaking, during our years together, we've never really gotten into fights or been at each other's throats. Sadly, this has changed over the last year, ever since my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I made the choice to care for her using my own funds since my mother has no assets. Recently, we got into a fight because as of late, things have gotten tighter financially. We're not struggling, but our lifestyle has become rather limited compared to what it was prior to me taking care of my mother financially. I've also been less available because I took on a different role at the job, higher pay, but more responsibilities and longer hours. She's been trying to get me to place my mother in a Medicaid-funded nursing facility, and she knows how I feel about that. We both work in the medical field, and we both know exactly what will happen to a case like my mother, who is fully ambulatory but requires hand-over-hand care, but can be combative with strangers because she's oriented to a person rather than a place. I told her even if we went with her idea, does she really think that will make things better? I will still go visit her often just to make sure they're doing right by her, and a private memory care facility would be 2 to 3 times as much what I'm currently paying for her home care. Then she asked, what about us though? We're young. We should be living and enjoying our lives, creating memories and experiences, which I agree with, and I told her we can still do that, just not at the frequency we once did. Then she started to tell me everything I already knew, and at this point, I started to lose my cool. I know it's progressive. I know at one point, if she lives long enough, she will need skilled nursing care. I know spending nearly $6,000 to $8,000 a month on her expenses is not financially sane. She's my mother though. Everything I have is because of her. She made countless sacrifices to raise me by herself, and it was not easy raising a kid, let alone one on the spectrum working multiple jobs by yourself. My wife knows this and knows how much my mom means to me. She tried to play, if your mother was of sound mind, she would want you to enjoy your life and to live happy. I snapped at this point. Sure, you may be right, but if we were really struggling, we're giving up extra vacations and freedom. This is where she replied with, then you have to choose me or your mother. I cannot live this way anymore. At this point, I told her she was being childish and unreasonable, and if she divorces, so be it. But don't try and play the victim or act as if she's being reasonable. Had it been her family, I would understand and do everything I can to support her through it. That's what partners do. They support one another, help lift them up when they fall, not kick them while they're down. You're the jerk. People with Alzheimer's and dementia belong in care homes. Unless you're paying your wife for her help, it's wrong. I say this as someone who had family in both categories. Why are you even making this post? For validation? So as to make you feel that you did nothing wrong and the only bad person is your wife? Because after reading your post and your comments, you absolutely don't want to compromise or accept the judgment of others. So why are you even posting here? You're the jerk. You have the right to take care of your mother, and she has the right to feel upset with it because it's taking away from your presence in the relationship and marriage, and also puts a financial strain in your relationship. For every response, you're just trying to argue with the commenter and don't seem to understand or accept their opinions. If you don't want opinions, then don't post here and ask for judgment. You're only wasting others' time. And lastly, you're the jerk. Not because you want to take care of your mother, but because you don't care what your partner feels and how you even, after posting in this sub, you're not ready to take others' opinions. You're the jerk for the specific question you asked. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she's being childish and unreasonable for trying to make me choose between her or my mother? Yes, you are the jerk because your wife is not childish nor unreasonable according to any mature criteria. She wanted to have an equal discussion with you where the outcome was not predetermined. That isn't childish or unreasonable. She has concerns about the future of your marriage. That's something most spouses would treat seriously and not call childish. She has not been consulted on financial decisions that affect her too. That's how kids are treated, but it does not make her a kid to point out how inappropriate that is. Please believe that all of my sympathies are here with you in your obvious love for your mother and the difficulties her care will bring you. I admire your devotion to her and willingness to support her. For that, you're definitely not the jerk. But your inability to see any solution here but the one you have chosen makes you the jerk. So does your lack of empathy for your wife. You see the situation as black and white. Your wife feels it's more complex than that. Don't insult her by calling her childish or unreasonable until you listen openly to her concerns. I hope you two can come to an understanding about the next steps. You're the jerk. Based on your comments, your wife didn't have any say in the decision to care for your mother. You presented your decision to her and went on your way. That's not how a partnership works. You're not a jerk for wanting to take care of your mother. Your wife is not a jerk for wanting no part in that. However, you are a jerk for being a bad partner and then losing your cool when your wife starts a discussion. If you want a chance for your marriage to continue, you should both seek counseling to figure out what to do. In the meantime, start thinking about how you're failing to support your wife/partner instead of blaming her for not supporting you. How dare he try to support his mother who's dealing with Alzheimer's, knowing that his wife and him would have to cut down on luxury vacations? I'd divorce him too. Am I the jerk for wanting my sister to pay me back because my nephew lost my electric scooter? Last year, I bought an electric scooter, which I've since modified to add more speed, a new handlebar, and some other mods. The scooter itself was not cheap at $1,500, plus mods put it over $2,000. I have a sister who's 43 and a nephew who's 13 who I always let house sit for me while I'm out of town on business. I have pets and plants that I need taken care of, and they always welcome a change of scenery. So I had to go on a business trip last month for a week and I let them house sit. My nephew has always asked me about my scooter, and I told him that it isn't for kids because it's extremely fast, and I've expressly forbidden him from riding it multiple times. His mother knows about this as well. Well, I came back from my trip, and my sister tells me that I'm going to be mad, but my nephew took my scooter out, left it unattended, and it was stolen. I was upset and asked them to leave. I told them they'd have to replace it, and my sister pleaded with me. They couldn't afford it. It was a mistake, and that he could just do chores around my house to pay me back. I told her that it doesn't replace my scooter. She said that any money would have to come from their vacation fund. I said, oh well. Our parents have gotten involved and said that I'm taking this too far. They agree that my nephew should be punished and I should be paid back, but to take away their family vacation is just cruel and petty. They suggested a payment plan. I told them no, that I use my scooter to commute to work often and that I wanted it back immediately. Furthermore, he was warned not to ride it since it's dangerous. Now that I've started to calm down here a little, I'm wondering if I'm being a jerk here by being so demanding and potentially punishing everyone else for my nephew's mistake. She said that the money would have to come from their vacation fund? If replacing the scooter meant they'd have to use money reserved for basic necessities, rent or mortgage, food, utilities, then I'd say you might want to reconsider the payment plan option. But if they're upset because they can't take a vacation this year because of this, then tough crap. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your sister should pay you. Your parents can pay money into your sister's vacation budget. Your sister can make payments back to your parents. Solved. Not the jerk. Repaying you comes before a vacation. You need it to commute to work. Their neglect caused it to be stolen, so they need to face the consequences, especially since it was expressly forbidden that he ride it. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.